Put it on. Right, so Pow. Good morning and welcome to everybody in the room and online. Colin is away today, so I will be chairing the meeting as vice chair. I can confirm that we're for it today. Alex, can I come to you for the apologies, please?
Yes, we've had apologies from Colin, as you said, from Hannah Rowan, Chris Telly, and we have Ed Roberts as deputy and Meshach as the dean.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Obviously, the register of interest is attached for us today, and could I just check whether there are any other declarations of interest, please? No? Okay, thank you. So moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting. So in the papers today, we've got the minutes of the July, or 2 meetings in July, which include the AGM. So firstly, can I check if there's any matters of accuracy, any points on the minutes that anybody wants to raise? No? Okay. All good. Thank you very much for those. So there is, moving on to the action log. So there is one open action, which I understand, Rachel, you're going to update us on.
Yes, this was around capacity to deal with kind of data queries. I think it arose, didn't it, from a kind of a long-standing sentence within the NIQPR, which indicated that some of the data items were not kind of where we want them to be. And as Hugh mentioned last time, the issue really is around capacity within our data teams, because all of that capacity is really focused towards phase 2 of our ambulance performance framework and the go live there in December. So subsequently to this discussion at board, we have had a conversation as executives, and we have put some additional resource into the ISOS team, but that will take some time, obviously, to recruit into. And it isn't the full ask in terms of what the data team really needs. But I think, Johnny, you were going to give a quick update then in terms of what you were thinking in terms of those particular data items that are referenced in the MIQPR, what you're thinking now in terms of the timeline.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Chair. I guess where we are with the data issue, so this is all around how we identify an APP in the data set. So the crux of the problem is we have different ways and different systems of defining an APP. So what we're trying to get to is a single source of truth. Now, without going through a full system integration program, which would take some months, we're trying to do that at a data layer level. So where we have got to is we've defined the solution, we've designed it, we've figured a way that we can get to a level of accuracy. We've now got the technical work that we have left to implement. So where we have the team, the focus at the minute and for the remainder of this year will be to get the phase 2 work complete, which is incredibly complex and time consuming. And then we will be into that level of doing the technical work after that. Technical work will take us approximately 6 to 8 weeks, we feel. So we just need to get through that phase 2 element, and then we can start to get into the actual APP design work. We have already designed some of that on internal reports, so some of that is starting to come through. So this isn't a stop-start. The team are working on some of that in the background. So some of the Power BI reports are already starting to flow through. There's just a lot of work for us to be able to tie all those loose ends together. But as I say, all of this comes down to just different ways of capturing an APP at a system level. And this is just how we've done this from legacy systems.
Okay. Thanks for those helpful update. And I think probably we might touch on this a little bit later in the MIQPR update as well. So it's one to keep on our radar, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much. So there were also a couple of items on the action log that I marked as complete. So just a quick check that nobody wanted to raise anything on those items before I move on. No? Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to the chairs and vice chairs report. So I'll take the paper as read. Obviously, Colin's not here, but was there any points that anybody wants to raise on the chairs and the vice chairs report? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the interim chief exec report. So over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. So yeah, obviously it's as usual a really full report in terms of a huge amount of work that's ongoing. Just a couple of things that I was going to pull out. The first was just you can see at the front of the report I've been able to go and visit a number of places and a number of staff, and that has been, as always, a real pleasure to see the kind of hard work, dedication, compassion that our staff, both frontline and corporate teams display. So I think just a great thanks ongoing really to all the people across our organisation. And you'll see also we hosted Emily Roach, the Director of Urgent and Emergency Care from the Department of Health and Social Care in England. So it was again a great privilege to be able to share with her and some of her team the work on our new model and the new performance framework. England are very interested in the work that we've been doing, and I think that just kind of again is testament to the kind of real innovation and hard work of our organisation. So a couple of other things just to pull out. The first one is paragraph 1, and this is it's a really important piece of work actually that we're doing to try to reduce the number of NEPT journeys that are cancelled on the day. So this is the first time we've actually been able to link the PAS system of one of our health boards, in this instance it's Howell Dar, with our own systems. And you can see there that in the first week of operation, 50 journeys. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you multiply that across, and we were able to do that across all of our health boards, potentially we're talking several hundred patients a week who we would not need to send to, and we'd then be able to use that capacity for other patients. And as we know, we do have a real issue within NEPS about insufficient capacity to meet needs. So really pleased to see that, and a great credit to Mark and his team who worked kind of really tirelessly on that. So that was the first thing I was going to pull out. Then I was going to pull out there's kind of a fairly large section there on 35 onwards, really about the work that the fleet team are doing. As we've recorded before, we have a huge investment, capital investment this year, bigger than we've ever had. And again, a real credit to the fleet team, because they're having to pull out all the stops to get so many vehicles on the road this year. And so it kind of gives you a great sense of the work there. So just wanted to say thank you to them. I'm not going to pull out the CMT programme, although there's quite a bit I do want eventually to pull out, but I think we'll pull that out in the harm report. So we'll come back to that. Paragraph 80, I wanted to pull out the fact that we have done some really great work within digital in terms of a digital recruitment workshop in August with people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. And I think that's been a great opportunity for those people to know more about us and to understand where the vacancies are. But it's also been just a great way of taking some positive action, which has been really, really good. The next thing I wanted to pull out was number 87, paragraph 87 on the digital front end. So I think we've talked about this before in terms of our virtual agent. It's now called Albot, which has been a name chosen by somebody within the organisation. But the reason just to kind of mention that is that we have had some additional funding from our commissioners at Welsh Government actually this year, another 140,000 to really kind of continue to develop that capability, which is brilliant. And then the last thing was just to note that the staff survey, we're preparing for the new staff survey, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware, and we will all be promoting that across the organisation and within our teams. So I think that was all I wanted to pull out. Thank you, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. So just before I open it up, I was just going to make a couple of comments myself. So I highlighted the fantastic progress on the cancelled journeys. And also for me on video consultation on 8. I mean, I sat with a mental health professional a couple of months ago and just saw the positive impact of being able to switch to video, probably about 20 minutes into the call. So 1,000, it's a huge number, isn't it? So I And I assume that's having a significant impact then in terms of that outcome and that quality of advice and support we can give. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then my other point was on page 24, I think it was 96. So shows the level of activity going on when we get to 96, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we're one of 3 organisations shortlisted for a HPNA award. So around developing a culture of avoidable harm. So I just wanted to highlight those points before I opened it up for any other points or questions that people have for Rachel. Rihanna?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask about the next one, but I won't. It's been covered off. So I do have a question on the video consult. I think it's great. Absolutely, not question that at all. I can absolutely see the benefits. It was just about around the information governance side of it, really. So I presume we're capturing them as a record. I presume that the people who are being consulted understand that that's being kept. So it was that side of it in terms of we're on the right side of information governance in relation to that. My other question, I think, was around the policy, probably not really for you, Rachel, was around the policy work. So we've made really good progress getting up to 50%, but it's still only half in terms of, our main controls as an organisation. And obviously you're indicating that there is a risk of some slippage because of understandable focus in other areas. So it's just kind of, how are we going to balance that out from a risk point of view? And my other one was around the COVID-19 inquiry. Obviously, we've lost some corporate memory, and it was just to get some assurance that the record of those that were here during that time who are no longer here or who might not be here in the near or medium future, that we've secured, their I suppose statements on it, isn't it? I'm sure we have, but because obviously I haven't heard anything around that in terms of our governance around it. So they were mine. Sorry.
Thank you. Can I ask Johnny to go for the first one in terms of the IG arrangements?
Oh, yeah. First off, can I just thank you for the key question into the board? I think is really important. So thank you. There's 2 parts of this that we cover. So information security and information governance. So via information governance, we have a really well established DPIA data protection impact assessment process. So we've gone through that ahead of time. We're really assured that we're following all the right governance and regulatory guidelines. Information security, so we conduct a full and thorough cybersecurity assessment so we can make sure that record is not only governed well, but it's secure. We don't open up any doors. And we did that ahead of time, so I can give assurance to colleagues that that's all conducted in line with regs.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. And then Trish, do you want to come in on the policy?
Yeah, on the COVID inquiry, if I can. So yes, we are keeping a really close eye on the policy programme. I think we did really well to go from 14 to 46 and up to 50. But we recognise there is quite a lot of work now to be done in Q3 and 4. So rather than come at the end of the year, ARAC asked us to come and give an update at the next meeting. So hopefully we'll get a better picture. But we are seeing quite a few coming through the policy groups that we've had in the last couple of meetings since ARAC as well. So we'll give a better position statement at that point as well. And we're also keeping a really close eye on those audit and monitoring sections, because they're the sections that are really important as to where is the oversight internally on those. And that's certainly where we'd be audited. On the COVID inquiry, yes, huge amount of work, and really happy to catch you up on that, Rhiannon, because we were the only ambulance service vehicle participant in Module 3. Jason, the statement in for that module. So there was an enormous amount of work making sure that we had the records during the inquiry, that we locked those down, and we had all of the evidence from those people that we needed to get that from. So we await the Module 3 report. I now understand that's coming in the spring, with Module 2B coming in November. So that will be a bit more imminent than Module 3. But yeah, huge amount of work with the pandemic governance group that reports into the executive leadership group and meets every 6 weeks. So still a lot of work ongoing right across the organisation on that, and pulling together lessons learned from the inquiry work. as well, which will stand us in good stead next time. Which would.
And presumably for those that have already left the organisation,
Yes.
access to everything
Exactly.
they're going to need,
Yes.
access to, should that need arise. Yeah.
And we're not anticipating being core participants in any other modules. It was just module 3. So we'll see what comes from that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want, I was going to ask Peter if he wanted to come in on the policy context, because obviously Eric have been overseeing that. And
just to endorse everything that Trish has said, we are obviously keeping a note on it. I think we're happy, pleased with progress to date, but I think getting the regular updates is what we need to get our assurance.
thank you. Is that okay, Rhiannon?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't see any other hands up. Peter.
Yeah, just one. Drones, it might be one for Johnny. 2 questions for IT. Really pleased to see that update on paragraph 86. It looks like, the demonstration has gone well. Just a couple of questions, Johnny. It says at the end there, work done to date to prepare the Heart drone for live deployment over the coming months. Is there a kind of set time? Is it fairly clear now when it will be deployed? Question 1. And question 2, will it just be a Heart, in terms of its potential deployment and use across the organisation? Do you see it being limited to Heart, or is there a potential, if this worked, to broaden it out? And then the third question, a little plea. I'd love to see a demonstration at some point when it would be convenient for the team. So I don't know. Is it for you to respond?
Yeah, I'll take those if I may. So first, where we're at. So end of this calendar year is when we'll be live. So the last couple of bits that we've got is a standard operating procedure, and we need to have just gone through our regulatory sign-off with the Civil Aviation Authority. So they give us this sort of final gold stamp. So we're in a good place with that. We've just kind of got to go through some of the CAA timelines, but we anticipate that being by the end of this calendar year. In terms of the second piece, is this the only place? So for this type of drone, the idea here was to provide that sort of visual aid in terms of complex scene. No, I don't think it's the only place that we can deploy it. So some of the work that's already going on at a research level is looking at how we can use beyond visual line of sight drones to deliver equipment. So that could be point-to-point equipment. You think of meds, for example, or it could be delivery of a defib, for example, in an emergency scenario. That will require regulation change. So we are looking at that research element linked into the Future Flights Group, the UK government. It's probably a slower burn, but we're keen to lead the way in this space. And lastly, what I'm looking to do is to set up a drone demonstration at one of our future board development days. So we've got that plan just developing in the background, because it's not just the technology that we want to show. We want to show the software that we've developed in-house as well, at next to no cost. So I want to highlight some of that. So we'll get that one there.
And I assume we're pretty looking at we're leading a lot of this, don't we? Presume
from an ambulance perspective.
I mentioned.
Absolutely. And where we're different here is we are using Starlink technology. So given our rural environment, we're able to deploy a really good connection using satellite. So we're pretty good in able to
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, so I can't see any other hands up, but apologise, I forgot to mention this earlier on in this item, but I just wanted to highlight the Wish ambulance 100 patient. So I happened to be at the event in Cardiff Castle when this was marked with the 100th patient, which was Rockwell, was a city hospice event. And I was chatting to Ed, who's led on this work, and Mark Harris. And, it was a really fitting, I think, event to mark the excellent work that Wish Ambulance do, and also for me to highlight the dedication of not only the paramedics and all the staff who give their time, but also the senior managers. So I was chatting to Ed and Mark Harris, and they were talking about, what they've been on the phone pretty much every day that week, making sure it can be quite tricky, I think, that some of those journeys, and so there's a lot of planning that goes on behind the scenes. So I just wanted to share that with board, because I thought it was actually quite emotional, but really fitting.
Just to come in on that as well, so I completely agree with you. And I'm meeting some of the team tomorrow in VPH actually to give a chief exec's commendation for exactly that. I mean, it's it's been going on for a while, but the 100th is a good thing to mark, isn't it? As
and it's over and above what people do in their day jobs, isn't it? So Estelle.
Yeah, just to say, Chair, that David Hopkins, our head of charity, is actually working very closely with the Wish Ambulance team, with Mark and with Ed, to look at ways that we can either access funding through donors and grants, etc., to try and support some of that infrastructure stuff, because recognising that there's more we can do if we had more dedicated time, recognising that Ed and Mark are busy running the, other parts of the organisation and the service. So we'll keep you posted on that. And recognising we're not convened as trustees, but thought it was useful just to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Really helpful. And then my last point on this item was just to thank Rachel, really, because obviously this is your last report as interim chief exec, and it's great that you stepped up, and we very much appreciate that. So thank you on behalf of the board.
Well, thank you, and I'm just going to thank you as well to the team, because all the executives have supported me hugely, and I felt very supported through the people. So thank you. It's been great. Thanks.
Okay, so before I move on to item 7, I just wanted to add an additional point on apologies, which apologies I didn't do it, but Angie gave her apologies and Catherine is here, so welcome to that. So apologies I missed that. Okay, so Estelle, we're coming to you for questions from the public.
Thanks, Chair, and Bore da pawb. Good morning, everybody, including colleagues on screen and any members of the public or colleagues and stakeholders who are watching us on the catch-up version, if you're not live. So we've got 2 questions this morning, which I will share with you, and I will direct out to colleagues to answer. And the first of those comes from Alice Whittle. So morning, Alice, if you're watching. Alice's question is, will there be any recruitment for NQPs, so that's newly qualified paramedics, and Band 6 qualified paramedics in the next year, 2026? And I understand Alice is working elsewhere in the UK as a paramedic, so he's interested in joining us. So if I hand over to Carl, if I may, our Director of People, I'm sure Carl will share some information on that.
Thank you. So morning, Alice. Thanks for your question. At the moment, we're looking at our skill mix in line with the clinical model to ensure we have the right split of clinical skills in our teams. Couple this with changes in working patterns, improved retention, and the financial landscape within the NHS means we are not in a position to confirm our recruitment pipelines for paramedic roles for 2026 just at this point. Any future vacancies will be advertised via our Working For Us pages on our website, and I'd encourage you to keep an eye out for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. And our second question this morning comes from Janet. Now, I haven't got my glasses on, so I better put it on to get Janet's surname correct. Patterson. I almost read that as Peterson, because I didn't have my glasses on. And Janet is the Wales manager for Epilepsy Action. So Janet's question is, given the challenges associated with prolonged emergency response times in rural areas, could you please outline the specific measures the Welsh Ambulance Service is implementing to ensure that individuals with epilepsy receive timely and safe emergency care? So that's the first element of the question. So how are we helping epilepsy patients who live in rural areas access care in a timely way? And then the second element of Janet's question is this. Furthermore, has the use of buccal midazolam as an alternative to diazepam been considered in order to better safeguard patient dignity during emergency treatment? So 2 elements, one on the drug side, one on access to services in rural areas. So Andy, I think you're taking this one for us.
Very indeed. Thanks, Estelle, and thanks for the question, Ms. Patterson. So you might be aware of the recent changes that have been announced by our Welsh Government now will categorise calls through the 999 system. So these changes allow for the organisation to be a little bit more exacting on how we respond and ensure we get the right operational resource deployed to best effect. And doing that in turn creates greater ability to provide a timely response to patients who are acutely unwell, be that in a rural or urban setting. We're coming to the end of phase 1 of these changes with the implementation of the purple and red categories. And then work has already begun on the implementation of phase 2. We're targeting to implementation of that on the 1st of December this year. So if Ms Patterson wishes to learn a little bit more about this changes, those details are within the news section of our website, or she can feel free to contact me directly if required. Now, of course, colleagues will be aware of the challenges we've seen in recent years relating to hospital handovers and how this has impacted on our ability to respond. I'm pleased to report we've seen significant improvements in recent weeks, and this gives us resources back to enable a timely response to patients. And whilst we're still some way away from what I would class as a normal state of affairs, it should be acknowledged that these improvements are really welcomed and that they have enabled us to respond to many more patients than we've been able to in recent years. So then moving on to the next part of this pastor's question, which relates to the buccal midazolam. And if attendees could bear with me, as there's some legislative technicalities within this answer, but I'll try to navigate those without bogging us too much down in that current drug legislation. I would agree with the premise of the question that the use of buccal midazolam does offer better opportunities to manage seizures in patients without the potential impact on their dignity, as she describes. And whilst the current treatment for seizures is IV intravenous diazimals as the first course of action, this isn't always possible, so can lead to rectal diazepam being the only effective route. Buccal midazolam, which in this case would mean an aerosol nasal administration, would be a more effective intervention, but as yet, midazolam, unlike diazepam, is not on the list of Schedule 17 medicines, which gives paramedics the legal basis to carry and administer the medication. And it's this that's preventing our routine adoption. However, there are some light at the end of the tunnel with this. Currently, the UK government is undertaking an open consultation on placing midazolam and a number of other medications on the list of Schedule 17 medicines. And doing this would allow us to immediately adopt this into practice. And I can confirm, having already talked to my colleagues across the clinical team, we'd want to be first out of the blocks should this change take place. As this is an open consultation, I would ask Ms Patterson to please add her influential views to this work through that consultation to ensure these changes take place. She can find the consultation on the .gov website and just search as Schedule 17 extension paramedics. She'll be able to locate it. I hope this assists, but please feel free to follow up with me directly if you require more assistance.
Thanks, Andy. Hopefully our questioners have received good answers to their questions. But as Andy says, if there's anything further that's required, drop us a line and we can look at that in more detail. And that concludes the questions from the public. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Estelle, and thank you for the responses, very detailed responses there. It's a really important part of this meeting, isn't it? And we're very keen to receive questions. So if anybody's listening, please consider submitting questions to us. Okay, so moving on to the patient story. So Liam, I think I'm coming to you to introduce this.
Yes, so I'll introduce the chair. And what I'm actually going to do is just do a very brief introduction. I think we watched the video and then I'll maybe fill in the supporting information afterwards. The thing I would just say up front is that this is one of those stories that we've received through the online patient portal. So I just reference that because actually it's a really valuable way for us to get direct feedback from patients on their experience. It's the second time we've had one that we've now brought through the full governance team. So I just think it's a good opportunity for people who want to give us a very direct level of feedback to be able to do so. So as they're watching Taylor explain her experience, it may kind of inspire them to also do the same.
So my experience is regarding my grandmother, who is 74, has multiple complex needs and is frail. After many months of experiencing ill health, it was clear that my nan needed more extensive help that she was getting from her GP. On Saturday, August the 16th, her leg had swollen, and it was a clue that something else was obviously going on. As it turned out, she had a large DVT that was causing these issues. Out of hours were called on 111 for help. We didn't actually have to wait that long. The call handler was great and logged our call. The GP who called back basically said she needs to go to hospital and it was down to us to get her there. He wasn't sympathetic or helpful and told us if we can't get her out ourselves, we need to call an ambulance. So in the past, we've taken family members to the hospital ourselves using our own vehicles, but this time we tried to move my grandmother, but she was in too much pain and would scream out. It turned out she had several fractures in her spine, causing these pains. We called 999 and after going through the questions again, we were told that there would be an 8-hour wait for an ambulance, as it was a life-threatening emergency, but how long is it appropriate to leave an elderly woman in pain? Even when we tried to get her on a sheet to help move her ourselves close to the edge of the bed, we needed someone with pain relief and the right equipment to help move her. We had a call back from someone on the clinical desk. She was brilliant. She contacted a GP out of hours. I guess because the GP called us back so quickly, he came out to see my nan in person within the hour. He confirmed she needs to go into the hospital and again with a suspected DVT. He was kind and very reassuring and said he would arrange an ambulance to take my nan. When he came back, he did say that a non-emergency vehicle would be quicker and it would arrive in 3 hours. The crew, Beth and Kyle, came out to see my nan and they were amazing. They gave her pain relief, which was gas and air that was able to help her move. She was in hospital for almost 2 weeks and was discharged from the hospital recently and was told if there was any other issues that she would have to go back through A&E. Given the trauma of getting my nan help in the first place to the hospital, this has filled us all with dread. There are so many barriers just to get her into the hospital for treatment. So please, can you help us with transport and questions as to why these things are so hard for elderly people and what processes we can do to make this easier? The experience of going back and forth, 111, out of hours GP, 999, and obviously the doctor that was put through to us from the original 111 call, I found the whole process very traumatic. Hearing my nan cry out and scream out in pain and knowing I couldn't personally do anything to get her somewhere where she could get the correct medical advice, medicine, anything to help relieve her from the pain she was in. And I just feel like I've lost a lot of faith in going through the normal process of, waiting and going through 111 and not just turning up at A&E. The current system that is put in place for the NHS is very complex. Obviously, when you call 111, you give the call handler all the information. Again, that information is then obviously given to the doctor at the time. But again, we're having to relay everything that we've just obviously spoke about with the original call handler. Out of the experience I've had, going back and forth and not getting the help or feeling like I was being heard from all the different people I was being passed around to was distressing. Not having a system put in place to be able to get discharged patients back into the hospital if needed. What process is it to help us be pushed back into the emergency line to get someone to come out and assist with medical needs, aids, or anything we need to get them out of the house? That is something that needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Anna.
I'm just going to say thank you to Taylor for sharing her story. And I think one of the things about Taylor's story is it shows the importance of the system coming together to wrap around individuals who have got ongoing healthcare need. I think tragically for us as a board, it's not unusual for us to sit and hear the experiences of individuals who we've not been able to respond to in the time that they might expect. So I think that's a challenge that we've been seeking to respond to, both in the work we do with health boards across the country, and in turn some of the work that we've been doing through the clinical model transformation. So the things that I would share are broad in the things that we've done to improve, the things that we've taken directly from Taylor's story, and the things that we'll continue to work on. Firstly, Taylor's story was shared at the Quality Management Group, and that was actually quite recently, so that went through in the last few days. And as a result of that, some of the people that sit on that group have identified there may be ways in which we can change some things internally. So the communication that sits between what will become our integrated care service and our NEPS ambulance care service, there may be opportunities to enhance what we're doing there. So I thought that was a really positive impact of people really thinking quite quickly about what might we be able to do different in a situation like this where we're not able to put a normal emergency response out. The clinical model is, the work we're doing with that is very clearly about getting the clinically driven prioritisation. So we've got a lot of work that's going on now. So as we go into the core categorisation phase 2, the expectation there is that our nurse advisors, our paramedic advisors, our APPs, our advanced practice paramedics will be in a much better place to really take a holistic view of the needs of an individual and to consider where within the prioritisation process they sit. That there's no absolute here. There's no absolute that says that somebody, if we're under that level of demand with that level of challenge as an organisation, we're going to be able to move everybody up to the top of the queue, because that just wouldn't be possible. But it does mean that we've got a far better clinically informed approach to achieving that. Andy referenced earlier the work that is taking place with health boards on the back of the ministerial task force. And we have seen significant improvements over the last couple of months in a number of areas. That's not necessarily the case across the country yet. But if we continue to see the improvement in the areas that we have had it, and we see a marked level of improvement in some of the health board areas, that will mean that our resources are in the right place. It will mean that we'll be in a far better place to respond in the way that Taylor rightly expects us to do for somebody who is in pain, in distress, and needing support. The final area I just wanted to focus on in terms of the service improvement side is that Dr. Smith, who is our Associate Medical Director, is leading a piece of work across the country, looking at how we deal with healthcare professional calls and trying again to think about, is there anything further we can do to make improvement? Is there any way we can link that directly in with the core categorisation work, so that there's a really clear understanding across all healthcare professionals that refer into us in very challenging situations. None of the times when people call us are generally easy. They're calling us because they are working with a patient and with a family or carers where there is a direct need. So we're looking to review our HCP healthcare professional work and see if there's more that we can do to improve. At the personal level, this, as I say, the story came in through the portal. And often when I sit here with a story, we've had quite a lot of contact with the family. We've done a lot of work through the PTR team. In this instance, we are obviously in contact with Taylor and seeking to support. I have offered a one-to-one meeting, if that would be helpful, to kind of go through some of the things I've just outlined, and also to give her the opportunity to share very directly her personal experience. And we'll see where that takes us over the next little while. But I think we brought this story because we often hear about the cases where the harm occurs at the very severe end, if you like, the medical acuity end. And actually, this is one of those instances where we have the harm that is building over time as a result of chronic underlying illness, exacerbation illness, and then an ongoing infection. And those are the really complex cases that don't necessarily get right to the top of the pile for an emergency ambulance. But for the family and for the individual, that distress and that discomfort builds over time and has a long-lasting effect. You know, that's the story of Taylor's story experiences. That this has a long-lasting effect. It does damage confidence. It does not give people it doesn't even think that safety net is there when they're caring for somebody, that actually we're going to be there to help them when the pressure and when the difficulties come.
Thank you, Liam. Estelle.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say really how really important it is that we have these patient stories, and I'm sure I echo the thoughts of the board when I say how very sorry I was to hear that, because we've all got elderly relatives, colleagues, etc. And I myself got a very elderly father, and it's why it's so important, I think, that, you know, later on we'll be coming on to the MIQPR and other things, and the harm report, and we can see all the data and all the statistics. But as Liam said, when you hear it from a family member, and we can all empathise both with the experience of Taylor's grandmum, but also with her as feeling disempowered as a carer about what can I do to help here. So I think it's just really important that we continue to hear these stories. It's always difficult hearing, I think, but it does go some way to showing, I think, that we do actually listen to patients and we want to hear those experiences to try and do better.
Thank you, Estelle.
Thank you. That was a good story to bring forward. Clearly not good for those involved in it, but I think really good for us. For me, it just re-emphasises the importance and, to a degree, the urgency of integration. Service silo is not the way forward. And you can see snippets of service silo, even in the services that we are offering, which of course is really at the heart of what we're trying to achieve with the remote integrated care service, as you said, Liam. It was interesting, of course, to hear something that we all very acutely know. The NHS as a system is very complex. Sometimes difficult to navigate when you're in it, let alone trying to navigate it when you're unfamiliar with it. And again, for me, it just reinforces that our thinking has to be one of we've got you. We have that responsibility, don't we, to try and aid the navigation in this system, particularly when we've got this crossover between urgent and emergency care. And of course, not managing one patient, but managing the thousands of patients a day that are getting in contact with us as they are seeking to navigate urgent and emergency care. So for me, there's a real reinforcement, I think, in that story in terms of the path that we're on, recognising we still have a long way to go. But perhaps even outside that organisation, there's a long way to go as well. And this system might be strong as its integration, I think, going forwards. So for me, lots of reinforcement, I felt.
Thank you, Lee. I think all really important points there. I guess my reflection is, yes, thank you to Taylor for sharing that with us. And I suppose to give some assurance that, we do want to listen. We do through a lot of the committee business and particularly Quest around putting things right. There's a significant investment in the organisation around, I think, listening, but we can always do more, can't we? I think that point around holistic, seamless access to services is one of the hardest things that we need to overcome, isn't it? And it's not all within our control, but I do have assurance that we are working on it as we need to. So did you want to come back in again, Liam?
Sorry, yes, thank you, Kerry. I just want to Lee prompted me to put my own notes, something I was going to say as well. When we talk about how we are integrated, it's also about how we're really thinking about there's no wrong front door. Yeah. So the access point to us, we will get to the point where it doesn't matter if we call through one our ability to give a consistent response and have a service across that entry point will only grow with the integrated care work that we're doing. And I think that will be really important, actually, because there will be greater consistency when people are coming in. Communicate our kind of information systems will be more joined up. So I just wanted to highlight that one. And the other thing that I didn't say in that, the overarching is our people. I thought Taylor was very generous to acknowledge that despite a really difficult experience, the people that she spoke to remotely, the people who attended, all did an incredible job, were compassionate and supportive. And again, that's really important, isn't it? Because they will have been under all of the pressures that led to that kind of delay. And in that moment, they were still as compassionate and as professional as they could be to support Taylor and her family. So I think sometimes, in all of the difficulty of the experience, actually the people, we often hear this when our crew get to the front door, the sigh of relief and the professionalism and the compassion that is shown is always acknowledged. It's just we need to get them there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I can't see any other hands up. So thank you very much, Liam, for bringing that to the board today, and thank you to Taylor if you're listening. I think you're also going to give us an update on Dylan's story that we heard at the last patient at the last meeting.
That's also in the AAA from Quest. So AAA?
Thank you. Sorry.
AAA from Quest has the detail in that as well. Of that, because we have to follow up. I should have made that link for you, Chair. Apologies.
No problem.
Well, okay. While I have the floor, can I just say we've lost our British Sign Language service today, unfortunately. We've had some technical problems, so can I just apologise for those people viewing this later? We don't have British Sign Language for this meeting today. We'll make sure that we rectify that, look and see what the problems are, but unfortunately we've lost them for today. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, but if this is being added online at a later date, then maybe there's a way that we can add that.
We can look and see.
Can we look?
See what we can do.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So moving on to items for approval, assurance and discussion. So our first item is actions to mitigate avoidable patient harm. So I'm moving to you, Rachel, to present this paper for assurance.
Thank you. Yes, and it's this coming after that patient story is the kind of formal paper, isn't it, that tries to wrap together what we're doing. And the journey that we're on. So a couple of things to pull out. We use this report to think about the harm that is coming to our patients. And increasingly, as we know, we're going to be moving to a system that tries to have better metrics around that, so we really understand patient outcomes. And you'll see kind of in the main body of the report that actually our ROSC rate, which is our kind of number one measure of outcomes in relation to patients in arrest, was at just over 27% for the month. So that was really a good set of outcomes for those patients. Although all of the work that we have in train is around in sustaining that and increasing that further. So that was really positive to see. In terms of some of the other metrics which we use as kind of proxies for patient harm, you can see that the numbers of patients who cancelled the ambulance prior to a dispatch has really significantly decreased, and that number is being maintained at just over 5,000 a month. That's still a lot of patients, but given that it was up at about 10,000, and we know anecdotally that it's likely that those patients will have come to some harm because they will have had to make their own way to care somewhere else and didn't get that care from us. So that's a really positive indicator. And then the other indicator we use is the length of time that people wait outside hospitals, because we know from previous reports that patients do come to harm when they're waiting outside EDs or an ambulance. And so it's really pleasing to see total number of handover hours has again gone down and has been sustained on a downward path the last few months. And the numbers of patients waiting over 45 minutes and an hour have also gone down. So that's really positive to see. How we're kind of continuing to make further improvements, as we know and we've alluded to already, we have gone live with phase 1 of our performance framework. We've gone live with aspects of our model, and we'll be moving to the next phase on the 1st of December. That's the planned date, and I think it's helpful at this point just to link a kind of quite detailed discussion that was has at FPC. So you'll see in the AAA a quite lengthy discussion, because that was around the committee assuring itself that this next phase was indeed going to be achievable, but B, was going to deliver the kind of quality outcomes that we'd be looking for. So I don't know whether, Chair, you wanted to bring in Jane at this point at all to kind of talk a little bit about the discussions that you had at FPC, just to kind of link the two reports there.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, happy to do so, Chair, if that's helpful. So in advance, we deliberately gave this significant time in committee. I think we had a really rich discussion. I think those two challenges in terms of is it achievable, recognising the pace at which we're working, and the fact that I think the most helpful thing I think that came through for me was the fact that this is really a single system in two phases. And actually there's risks in terms of if you try and slow down the sort of the second phase in terms of that. So that was really helpful to understand that from exec colleagues, and particularly Andy was really helpful in informing us of that. So I think there was some significant assurance from the committee on that front. I think recognising the evaluation is being set up and will be in place, but we are very much committed to evaluating it as we're going along, and I think there was some comfort on that. But I'll pause there to see if there's any other colleagues wanted to add anything at this stage.
I think just to confirm that the extraordinary meeting of Quest to consider the QIA and the EQIA, so the quality impact assessment and the equality impact assessment, has been set, and as has the extraordinary trust board, which is an open trust board, on the 23rd of October. So they're already in train.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I do want to just emphasise and support what you're saying there, in terms of there was robust discussion, because of course the importance of seeing it as a whole, and it is important from a risk point of view, but it is the balance of making sure that we are doing it from an evidence base as much as possible, or at least we're assessing the risks as we go, both ways of not doing and doing too quickly. And I think there was a lot of emphasis on the impact of on our staff in terms of the pace, not just within Lee's area and Andy's area, within all areas, digital probably in particular. So I just wanted to, as this is an open trust board, I just think it's really important. So it's getting the balance of risk. We want to get there, obviously, but we want to get there in the right way at the right pace. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. Lots of assurance there.
Yeah, and just to thank you, Jane, that's really helpful. And just the other part, I suppose, and again, echoes what Andy said earlier, is, you know, a kind of a formal thank you to those health boards where we've seen a really marked improvement in delays. And we know that the health boards where those delays haven't decreased, we know there's variation, are working themselves hard. So, and I've spoken to their chief executives to really just make sure that, you know, if there's anything that we can do to help on a continuous basis, that we're there to do so. But just to reiterate, it remains a huge priority for the Cabinet Secretary, the Welsh Government officials, and they are linking in very closely with health boards to enable those changes expected by October, in terms of nobody waiting over 45 minutes. So lots of progress made, but still quite a long way to go. And the last thing I just wanted to say, we don't pull it out. We see it in the dashboard. We don't pull it out often in the kind of narrative of this report, but it just, you know, the harm that comes to our staff as a result of these pressures across the organisation. And Lee mentioned just now that, you know, the vast majority of the times, despite being under incredible pressure, our staff turn up and are caring, compassionate, and provide excellent patient experience and outcomes for those patients that they see. But we know that these things do have an ongoing impact through, you know, sickness levels, turnover, and that this is not just in our frontline staff, but in our control centres as well, and across our corporate teams, actually, who have to deal with the aftermath of some of these difficulties. So I just wanted to kind of remind us that, you know, we're doing a lot of this work not just for our patients, but also to make the lives of our staff better as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
Yeah, it's a small one. It was just in relation to the chart. Looking at the shift overruns, I can see that the trend has improved on July's month, obviously, which was sort of an up and down trajectory. The question is just why it was shown as a green and no action required, because I think there's a lot of action being done, and I think it is required. So just wonder why it was shown as green rather than amber potentially.
I think the way that we RAG rate these tends to be around, have we seen an improvement? So it tends to be an improving picture as opposed to, we're definitely looking to get to this point or that point. I think that's a good point, Damon. We had a conversation, didn't we, earlier this week in our WASP meeting. And subsequently, kind of Lee has been reflecting on that, I know, in terms of perhaps we should be having more of a kind of clearer target of where we want to get to, rather than just this kind of slightly vague sense of what to improve. So that was a good point that colleagues had made earlier in the week, which we're going to try and follow up on.
So I think, Damon, it's not less of a priority because it's green. And when you're looking at a dashboard like this in isolation without narrative, it's quite tricky, isn't it, to look into it from that perspective?
It was only because when you look at the rating at the bottom when it says green, it then states that no action is required. So it was just that sort of, didn't sort of line up. Yeah.
No, that is a really good point, Damon, because green doesn't, particularly on those indicators where we're looking for continuous improvement. You're right. Even if we're seeing some improvement, it doesn't mean we've stopped working on it. And in fact, as you said, and we've just alluded to, we had a really good conversation on this, and we know there's much more work that we need to be doing. So thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay, thank you, Leanna.
They were the two areas on the kind of impact on staff that my attention was drawn to, and it was the shift overruns, but it was also the average jobs per shift. I would really welcome us getting a bit tighter on some measures for that. Now we have, we're in phase 1 going into phase 2, because I suppose I was anticipating we might have seen a little more change in those figures for, maybe it's too early, I don't know, Lee, but for August with the changes. Is it too early, do you think?
Well, we've seen, as Rachel's already talked about, noticeable improvement in handover delay issues about capacity.
Yeah.
But the handover delays haven't gone.
So
there's still 13,000 hours lost. So that's still a too much of our capacity. So I think we still need to push further. I'm sitting here instinctively thinking, it's gone from a point something to point something else. Yeah. So you might instinctively think some more. So I don't think you're wrong to be thinking that, because as I'm sitting here and my cogs are turning, I'm equally thinking, it would be nice to kind of see that pushing into the 3s and the 4s.
Yeah.
And how come? So it's maybe something we just need to have keep our eye on.
Yeah.
Hopefully we still see capacity return to us, but maybe we just do need to have a little bit of a sense check in there just to assure ourselves that it's representative. Because I'm kind of, you'll be picking it up. I'm sort of thinking, okay.
Okay, so a sense check in terms of capturing that point for the minutes. And Peter, sorry, I think you wanted to come in.
On exactly that point, we raised it at FPC actually, and to be fair to Hugh, he has gone away. I think the figure needs to be unpacked. So what Hugh is trying to do is just differentiate the EA jobs per shift. Right. And indeed, some early modelling of this data does indeed show that the EA shifts have gone up. I think the issue here, there's a number of variables that are put into the one figure. So I think we are due to meet with Hugh in the coming months, but certainly I think we need to determine, is there a correlation between reduced handover delays and increased jobs per shift, even if it's that limited to the A, because there are other variables at play as well at this. So I think in a succinct way, I think we're looking to unpack that figure, but absolutely we need to determine if there's a correlation. That's really important, and where that correlation is between the reduction in handover delays. But I think, looking at Jane, I think we are due to meet with Hugh. We're trying to get a meeting in the next couple of weeks, I think, to develop that further And I'm sure FPC will be looking to develop that theme.
Yeah, and
I know Andy wanted to come in. Okay.
Yeah, just to pick up on Peter's point, yeah, I mean, Hugh, helpfully and Patrick, I would suggest it's a bit of a crude measure at the moment, and obviously as we're shifting, I think we need to, take a look again at what we're measuring and what we're including in these figures, so that we can really understand the correlation or not. And you can see it. We put like a red figure, for example, and those always draw your attention, don't they, on the percentage conveying, but the trend actually is really positive. So I would suggest that probably feels like, to me, more like an amber. So I think Estelle was talked to us previously around actually getting some further work done in terms of looking at these key indicators. I think they are ripe for a bit of a review to make sure we're really measuring the things that we really need to be measuring.
The board can take assurance that F&P are looking at this. So as board, we don't need to get into the detail on it, but we can take assurance that, is that okay? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Andy.
Part of it's been coming out, we're going to say some of this is a really crude measure as we start to change the model, because if we're going to get to a point where we're only sending ambulances to patients that always need conveying, then naturally, as the proportion of jobs that they'll attend to, it's going to be all less, because not all patients need conveying if we can manage them a different way. So I think, you've got to be very careful as we switch the model of the measures keep up. That wasn't necessarily going to be the point I was raising. The point I was going to raise was around that very pleasing uptick in ROSC. And I just wanted to kind of limit expectations in the way we improve ROSC. It's not going to be a linear. In the next month we'll be at 28, month after we'll be at 29, etc., etc. Some of these things that we'll be doing around improving ROSC are a long-term growth in terms of our improvement. So, I would expect we are going to see quite significant variability from month to month, but with a trend line that shows an upward progression, over the next months and years. So, like I said, I saw it was elated at the fact we've seen such a, this is a 5% improvement from where we've been before, and by far the highest we've ever been. But it ain't going to be like that every month. So I just wanted to kind of just put that out there just to make sure we were all on the same page. This is a longer term trend we're going to get, because there are so many links in our chain of survival that will make the difference. Things that we have direct influence of, all the things that are more societal that are going to take a lot longer before they start to bear fruit. So that's the way.
Thanks, Andy. That's really helpful. Angela.
Thank you. Leah, I was wondering if I could ask for the breakdown of data for the hours that you've sent me in the past, if that's okay. Helpful, the lost hours.
By health board.
Yeah.
We can. Shall we have if you want something a little bit more regular, maybe we can have a chat.
That'll be great.
Okay, let's do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. So I just I was reflecting on the positive outcome that the increase in some of these figures that we've been monitoring for a while, and Ross being one of them, but the consultant close rate in August at 20%, patient cancellation. So I just, when I read this report, it's one of the most difficult reports I think we receive at board. It is about patient harm, and it feels to me that we have at last started to have some steady progress, and for a number of reasons, our own clinical transformation model, but also the handover delays. And I guess as I was reading it, and my worry was, as we're coming into winter, what the level of confidence was around sustaining. I know we talk about this a lot, but sustaining this improvement. And obviously we've got the changes again in 1st of December. So I suppose getting it out of the little bit of the detail and thinking, okay, well, how do we think it's going to be around December, January? A fair question. I'll come to you, Rachel. Is that okay?
Did you want to come in, Liam? Sorry,
After you.
Oh, I mean, I think we, there's still, I think there's quite a lot of assurance we take internally in terms of our own changes. I think, I mentioned earlier around the health boards, a number of them have made significant changes. I think there is still a risk around the sustainability of those improvements. I think in the paper it notes we do often see improvements during the summer periods, and it could be that some of these improvements are kind of kind of cyclical, seasonal effect. Having said that, we do know that the health boards are working very hard on this. And of course, we don't know what winter will bring in terms of demand. You know, depending on things like flu. If I bring that up as an issue that I know Welsh Government are really concerned about, we've seen flu vaccination rates, you know, across the board, not just in the health service, but in the population at large, go down. So if we have a bad flu winter and people are not vaccinated, that is going to exacerbate the pressures that are in us, that are with us. So it's not all within our gift, I think, and there are still quite a lot of risks in terms of what that response times, you know, experience outcomes are going to look like over the winter period. And I think, as we've always done, we've said to ourselves, we need to keep going on the things that are within our gift that we know will make an improvement, and work then with others to kind of support them in making some of their improvements. But the flu vaccination campaign, you know, for us, is important, isn't it, for our staff to be part of that kind of journey of trying to make sure winter is as good as it can be. Yeah.
Thank you. Liam, did you want to?
I was just going to build a little bit on so I do think everybody in the UK has looked at the data on the southern hemisphere, and we are expecting it to be a challenging winter. So generally, the northern hemisphere follows the southern hemisphere, and it has been quite a challenge in that area. But I probably would reference the Ministerial Advisory Ministerial Task Force on Wait 45. So in terms of sustainability, I think from a trust board perspective, and I sit on there as two of the clinical execs alongside three others from health boards. There's a really clear focus within Welsh Government and within NHS Wales towards an improvement on holding to account all of the organisations, ourselves included, for the improvement trajectories that we are setting and seeking to see that sustainable improvement. So I think one of the benefits for us, compared perhaps to previously, is that this feels like we're not doing the pushing and the pulling ourselves. Actually, we've got a number of other entities that are doing that for us. And I think that's quite powerful in terms of giving us as a board assurance that there will be improvement. And then I think that the other things that I would flag are just within the internal, so within the work that we're doing internally, that the level of support that we are wrapping around, particularly integrated care. So the role of perhaps paramedics, role of advanced clinical practitioners, specialists in their field, is all about enhancing the level of practice for our remote clinicians. And the more that we are able to do that, then the better they are going to be placed to make a decision on whether or not we need to get an EA out, whether or not there are alternative pathways. We've got some good investment that's going into how we support that, particularly from a falls perspective. So we often have real challenges around falls in the winter, and we are hopeful that as a result of some of the investment, we will see some of those long lives and some of those, the consequences of a long life, improve over the course of this winter. So I think we're feeling very positive that that's a good investment that will help us make a material difference in reducing harm. And then I think the final thing then is our people are dependent on what's wrapped around them in the community. So when we talk about conveyance decisions, when we talk about time on the scene, the two factors that all really materially affect that is what's the level of provision in the community in primary care that enables us to make different decisions, because paramedic, nurse, and EMT, EAP can make a decision that says this person should probably stay at home, but they have got something wrapped around them. And so, we have made commitment last winter. We are building on that again this winter to have ways of holding a patient or within our care or longer. And in doing so, then what we need to have is the confidence that the health board, community and primary care infrastructure, the community voluntary sector are also in place to take that care over. So I think that's the bit that certainly when I'm talking to my colleagues within EDONS, and certainly the conversations at the MAG, is how do we make sure we've got a director of services and a level of provision that ensures that whether it's one of our crews or actually if it's a GP or another member of the healthcare professional community, when they identify that somebody could be kept at home with the right level of support, that support is accessible. And that's a dependency for us as we go into winter.
It's just a build on Liam's point. What's been really interesting at the W45 meetings has been around that consistency of where we see improvement. It's been less about front door, more about back door and the flow through the hospital. And where we see those health boards that have really made quite significant, that's where their focus and attention is from. What we then pick up through that is the level of, to your point there, Kerry, in terms of the sustainability through winter, is a level of senior oversight of leadership that it's requiring to maintain that on a day-to-day basis, with executives and assistants, execs walking the floor and actually being present to keep that momentum up. The question for me will be as to how much of that then has become embedded before the other winter pressures come in, as all the ability of that management oversight will be maintained every single day as we go through winter. It's just not feasible. So, it's going to be interesting to see as to whether that can really become the new norm of ways of working before those pressures kick in. But we get some assurance, I think, that we might get that take place as to whether that will and turn out
Okay, that's really helpful. And I was just thinking there's the Cabinet Secretary Summit coming up, isn't there, as well? So hopefully this will be part of the discussion on that day as well. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add, really, I suppose the finances across NHS Wales at the moment, the majority of health boards are currently reporting deficits with a plan as we go into winter to recover those deficits. Given the winter pressures we're going to see, the increased demand, it's how attainable that is going to be. So obviously there are going to be pressures within the system that we need to consider how that is going to impact us in terms of the weight 45, as well as other pressures that we may see coming through the system.
Thank you. It's a really important context, I think. Okay, thank you. A really good discussion there. And at board, it's not often throughout the agenda, it's not our role to get into the detail, but I think this report in particular is really important that we do get into that detail. So, okay, so we're asked to note the initial impact of the trust clinical model evaluation, note that there has been a material reduction in hospital handover delays, note the need to continue to carefully monitor patient experience and outcomes, and note the need for all health boards to further reduce hospital handover lost hours. So are we happy to note that? Okay, thanks very much. So moving on to risk management and the board assurance framework. This is for approval, so handing over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. So as you'll see from the AAAs from the committees, as in all board meetings, all of the committees have had good discussions around their risks. They continue to drive the agenda. The new front covers that you'll see also have a section in there to align the risks to the paper. So you've got a further embedding of mitigations as well. So the paper before board, as it always does, goes into quite a bit of detail on our highest rated risks, risks 223 and 224. You'll see they remain at 25. We continue to review that. Certainly the executive owners of those risks and the ELT review those in detail. And we'll take account of any sustained and widespread reductions in handover, as well as the changes to the clinical model and the Weight 45 initiative. But for all the reasons we just heard from the paper that we just had in the discussion we just had, we don't feel at this point it's the time to be reducing that score. But it gets reviewed monthly by the executive owners and bi-monthly by the executive leadership team. There has been a change in one risk, which is the high absence rates. That's a risk 160. We've reduced that from a 20 to a 15 because of the year-on-year reductions in sickness. That's not to say we don't keep an eye on it. At 15, it remains to be reviewed monthly, as all high-rated risks are, and it also comes through bi-monthly to the executive leadership team So we will continue to keep an eye on that and all the mitigations around that. There's a new risk on the register, which is the unauthorised or inappropriate use of AI technologies. You've got the headlines for that. The full details will be coming through to the Finance and Performance Committee, where we'll look at that as well as all of the other digital and cyber reporting that we look at as well. So I think that's really helpful. We've also got a development session on AI later in the year and had a good discussion on this in the executive leadership team yesterday. So one of those topics that will be coming to the fore a bit more. The last thing I think is the risk management policy. It's here for approval. It's the one of the handful of policies that the board has to approve. We probably will be making some more changes to this in the not too distant future because we'll be bringing the risk appetite statements through to board in November. We wanted to bring it here now because it was a few months past its review date. So there's non-material changes in this policy, but we'll make some more around risk appetite to update that following the discussions that we had. It went through ARAC, so you'll see it in their AAA as well, but it's here for approval today. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Trish. Peter, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just a couple of points there. Starting with the risk management policy, just to give assurance to the board that there are no material changes. So ARAC was more than happy to endorse that policy for approval. I think secondly, just to mention the good work in terms of those key critical risks. Of course, we are now doing more work, Trish's team, to differentiate between the factors within our control and outside of our control as well, which I think is really helpful. And I think there was a third point, I can't remember it, but I'll pick up on the risk appetite. I think it's reflecting, we had a good board development day last week where certainly now looks like we've completed as a board what we think the risk appetite should be. So really excited now we can take the next step to contextualise now our risks, given the fact we've linked up our strategic objectives of our risk appetite. That's a really important piece of work and will really help us to take this the next step on this journey. So certainly ARAC were very pleased. And I certainly took a lot out of last week's board development day where we discussed this. So thanks to you and Julie and the team, Trish.
Thanks, Peter. I thought it was a really robust discussion and as has the whole process been actually in terms of this transformation work. So thank you, Trish, you and the team, particularly Julie, actually, who I know we're working very hard behind the scenes on it. So we're asked to consider and discuss the contents of the report, receive assurance on the review and attention to the principal risk, and note the ratings and mitigating actions for each principal risk and approve the policy. So could I just check we're all happy to do that? Yes? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, would you a break? But we're running a bit ahead of schedule, so I was going to propose that we take at least the next item. Are we all happy to do that? Yeah? Okay, so over to you, Estelle.
I am just change your name. Thanks, Chair. And actually, we kind of covered many of the issues I was going to pull out in the MIQPR in that previous discussion on the mitigating patient harm paper, because there's some, obviously, the issues are common across the both papers. So just a couple of things that I would pull out. First of all, I think some colleagues have alluded to it, that we are going to have a sit down and review some of the data metrics across, I guess, all our reporting, but particularly in the MIQPR. And I think that discussion we've just had about, we've got the same metrics coming through in that mitigating patient harm paper, just get a lens on from our non-exec colleagues and some of our key executives as well on what is the data that's going to provide you with the assurance that you need as a board. And particularly, we picked this up in a conversation yesterday at executive leadership team about, as the model starts to take effect, for want of a better phrase, we've talked a lot about in the model and in the performance management framework, this is about quality of outcome for patients. And actually, we still report numeric data. That's not to say that's not important, but putting a lens much more strongly on what do those clinical outcomes look like? Are they in line with what we thought they might be, both in terms of the performance management framework and the model? I think is going to be really important as we start to kind of try and shift the narrative a bit away from, focusing almost exclusively on numeric data and a bit more into the clinical outcome data. So I think the ROSC example that we just talked about is really important. So if we look at that, and I'm just going to pull it up a second, the ROSC data has gone up, I think it's up to, it's gone up 6 or 7% just in the month. So, you know, that's really, really important that we start to get a lens on that. So just wanted to flag that, and colleagues will hopefully receive an invitation to a conflab later in the autumn around that. So that's the first thing to say. The other thing to say is in terms of the data, I know, Chair, in particular, you've picked up some absence of data, for example, sickness absence data for August, which is simply there as a function of reporting dates not aligning with sort of paper dates. So we do now have that figure, but it's not reported here formally because of that misalignment in kind of date. So again, all these things can come out in conversation. One of the things we haven't touched on, if I may, or not so much perhaps, in that previous conversation about mitigated patient harm, for obvious reasons, things like our NEP service. So we're seeing some positive improvement in some areas, and then some slight sort of, you know, variability in performance elsewhere. We're on that. We know about it. We know why, and we're trying to work through what are the capacity and demand issues there, and how can we look at how we can improve performance across a range of domains there. And we know it's something that our commissioners are interested in. So there's something there for us to look at. And of course, again, the NEP service in particular, because of the longitudinal nature of their relationship sometimes with patients, because they take patients much more frequently, the same patients, as many of you will know who've been on ride-outs with NEPs. That performance affects a cohort of patients who are quite vulnerable and with whom we have long-standing relationships. So important, I think, from a patient lens to understand how that is going. And the other thing that has been picked up, and again, we've touched on it briefly, Johnny did at the start of the conversation this morning, was around data quality issues. So again, linked to the whole sort of probably review we need to have, but in particular, we've had a line in here for some time now around data quality issues, in particular in relation to APPs. And we do now have some work in train to understand what is it that we need to do. The problem really is, you know, APP kind of development has straddled a number of years, and we've got a bit of a fragmented and piecemeal approach, which means we can't actually at the moment pin down with clarity the kind of terrible word to use, productivity, if you like, of APPs, where they are, who's on shift, what are they doing. And we've got isolated bits of data, but we're not connecting those dots as well as we should. So again, that's a piece of work that we're aware of. And as we've said, we've invested in IDS, but there is now, I've just had an email from Leanne Smith overnight, who's on this and has got some potential solutions in how we connect that data. So hopefully before we're very much older, we will have some more robust data around that we can reflect in future reports. So there wasn't too much else I wanted to draw out, Chair, largely because what I had on my list has been raised in that previous conversation. So I don't want to rehearse that there. I know that obviously this report in more or less very similar iterations has been to a number of the committees in the last couple of months where there's been much more scrutiny, as we discussed earlier and Jane raised around FPC. If any other committee chairs, there's anything specific that came out of your conversations that you want to raise, very happy for you to feed those in now or take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just one thing I wanted to flag on data quality. So FPC did receive some new data quality metrics that we're now starting to report on. So whilst the APP issue is been highlighted and discussed today, we do have some positive news with data quality as well in terms of the data warehouse failures. They remain well below industry failure rates, which is really positive. And what I would say is we adhere to those Federation of Informatics professional standards in terms of how we manage and monitor data at a warehouse and technical level. And again, we are following that best practice, notwithstanding that we have such as APC. So I just want to give that flavour that we are having that level of transparency and that level of detail through FPC. We'll do so.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Sorry.
I think the one that's directly opposite is because you wanted to make sure you didn't miss anybody on the screen. I guess it was the NEPS one that I was particularly focused on, particularly the target around discharge and transfer. And I suppose to the point that Andy, well, I think it was Andy that was emphasising the focus being on the back door, not necessarily the front door. And I guess we just want to ensure that WAST isn't part of the problem of the back door challenge in terms of discharge. So it's great to hear on it, but I suppose it was just some assurance because I'm not normally in F&P. When might we anticipate whatever it is you're going to be doing to make the difference will have an impact on that particular target, the discharge and transfer?
So there's two bits for us just to make sure we keep in mind with NEPS is the different kind of service lines within NEPS. So some of the struggles or challenges that Stella was alluded to predominantly for us are featuring in our sort of outpatient activity work, and that's where we would be seeing things like capacity management plan cancellations happening, transfer and discharge, of course, slightly different, has been different to when we were doing the contracts. They're all subject to different arrangements. That largely transfer and discharge service doesn't do too bad. So it's an important starting point. It is there are inefficiencies in transfer and discharge, and frequently because we will find ourselves working with health boards, particularly later in the day, to understand why we have perhaps got activity that remains with us. We call them handbacks because they go back to the health board to say, sorry, we can't do that journey for you, a discharge particularly. And often, not all the time, I don't want to position ourselves out here as the models of perfection because there's always opportunities for us to do better and learn. But often what we find is that they are late bookings to begin with. And that is testament to the discharge processes that exist within hospitals. We want to move ourselves as far as possible to day before bookings, at least day before bookings, because if we get those bookings in early, we're able to plan for it. We can also have some of those resources start early, which is all about gaining early flow out of a hospital for them to receive what's coming in. We're just not there yet in terms of efficiency of process. I think it rears itself in terms of bookings. It rears itself in terms of arriving patients not being ready. Sometimes we're then waiting. Sometimes we don't wait. Sometimes we say, if patient's not ready, you need to rebook because we've got other patients to move. So we're sort of operating in that framework of inefficiency, which is some of it really is inefficient. So we are, as part of conversations that are ongoing with commissioners around NEPS provision broadly, the efficiency conversation is not new. We do discuss that at what was the DAG, now the CAG, so a lower tier level meeting with health boards in order to create flow efficiencies. So there's a lot going on in there, but dynamically we do have through the ODU and NEPS control, we are certainly working really hard dynamically to move as many of those patients as we can on the day that they're booked. We just need more booked sooner.
It does sound like the Wait 45, if the focus is that end, there's more opportunity because that's a different kind of space, isn't it, in terms of some of those challenges?
It's discharge planning and discharge flow. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just come back on that one.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, during the consultation events we had on the Wait 45, I purposely positioned myself not in the pre-hospital workshop or in the bits that talked about, just trying to gain my own understanding. And the way Lee described it there in terms of those processes for, we should be planning somebody's discharge.
Come in.
That was clearly absent in the workshops there, and they acknowledged that this is our biggest challenge in terms of doing that. So, and that leads to whatever the round that one, and then they say the place is ready for discharge, and then expecting that it's all going to slot into place within an hour. And it was clearly emphasised, I think, in those workshops.
Okay, thank you. Damon.
Just had a question with respect to item 11.1. Just in relation to my previous comment, I noticed the shift overruns on this particular chart are showing the same data, but obviously in red. So I think that probably fits. My question in respect of the average jobs per shift and the value, I'm just wondering. We've had green shoots in respect of the hospital delays and you know, the reduction. But I'm looking at the trend, and I just trying to understand why. Do we know why the average jobs has gone down, which would sort of I don't know. Just is that something to do with the clinical model, or is it any or less demand, or sorry.
That's all right, Darren.
I think it was well covered. It was well covered earlier on, and there's a point in there, and you did well to jog my memory actually of the conversation. And I think what's going to be key for us to do here is recognising we need to look at the EA position because we have got some resource types that will always be utilised depending on the patient presentation. So CHARU, for example. So releasing ambulance capacity at emergency departments will not mean that CHARUs will go to more incidents per shift because CHARU is purely clinically targeted. We'd expect to see that increase in ambulances, and as Peter shared, Hugh's already indicated that that is what we're seeing. So we probably just want to have a look at that for next time, but as was covered earlier by Chair.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and I was just going to ask Bethan to come in here and just give us a quick update from a Quest perspective on the Putting Things Right recovery plan that I think is quite important context for this report as well. Is that okay, Bethan?
Of course, bore da pawb. Thank you, Chair. We did discuss this in some detail at the last meeting of Quest, which was on the 5th of August. And in our meeting, we had the usual PTR report, but also the recovery plan that the team had been working on. The recovery plan, is fair to say, has been developed in order to address some structural and staffing changes, but also in order to respond to the required system and process improvements that we want to embed. We've discussed this many times, and we're very clear that the challenges are quite complex. It's not just the volume of investigations that we're having to deal with, but it's the complexity of each one of those. And we did discuss the fact that the recent changes to the clinical model have in some way exacerbated these to a point as well. We have unfortunately had some recruitment challenges in this space, and therefore our initial assumption around audit and investigation capacity has not been met as yet. We haven't increased the resources to the level we'd hoped or we'd planned to. We were expecting improvements, though, periodically and slowly, and we were told quite clearly, really, those improvements should be expected on a gradual basis rather than anything quick, although I do note we have had some improvements in the most recent month of reporting, but we expect those gradual improvements to be sustained over the next year. During the conversation that we had at Quest, you'll remember, Chair, we did have some discussion around some concerns that we had as committee members around the deliverability of this plan, not at all due to staff commitment or dedication or focus in this area, because that's unwavering, but simply because of the wider system pressures that the Trust is continuing to operate within. And one of the things that we know from the last report that we received, whilst it is great, and Lee mentioned this, it's great to see the significant improvement in hours lost to handover delays at the level they are currently running at. There will continue to be patient harm, and we cannot, by our own means, mitigate against that level whilst they're running at 12.5 or 13,100. So in terms of a Quest perspective, whilst we were concerned around the deliverability simply because of those ongoing pressures, we were assured that the exec leadership team will continue to monitor this very closely over the coming months. And naturally, Chair, as Quest, we will continue to have updates on this and we will keep quite close to this as it continues. So I think I would pause at that point, Chair, unless there's anything anybody wanted to add that were also at the committee meeting with myself. Thank you.
Diolch, Bethan, very helpful. Rachel.
I wasn't at the committee meeting, but just to kind of add some assurance there to what you've said, Bethan, this has been to our executive team meetings a couple of times. We have put some additional resource into a range of areas across the organisation, because it doesn't just sit kind of in Liam's directorate. This is something that is across, but I suppose the slightly different approach that I've asked to be taken is that we see this as a programme of work that is run as a programme. So we've put some project management resource into it. We're going to be, establishing a proper structure that brings together directorates to look at those improvements, and as you say, it certainly isn't just about demand. It's about how we go about some of these things. Are there better ways of doing it? So, I think the next report is coming back to the executive team now in a couple of weeks' time. And so I think with that programme and more matrix approach, I kind of a bit more confidence that we'll see some kind of progress on that, because it is, I see in this role, not just the things going to patients, but, concerns raised by MPs, by MS, by, there's delays in those responses has got to be something that we get to the bottom of and improve. So, but the team are all on that now. Thanks.
Thank you. Very helpful. Liam.
Yeah, just to build a little bit on the comments from Beth and then from Rachel. I think there's two factors that maybe when we kind of made the changes a year or so ago that we were not as cited on. So first is complexity. All of the changes that we are making in the organisation means that it is a longer process to undertake the investigation. There's more and of points internally at this point that we're trying to understand how do we get things, get that information flow right, and that has added to complexity. And Lee's team in particular have been working to support that, and that's where I think we'll see things move on. I guess what I just want to caution at trust board level is absolutely we've got a recovery plan that I will be bringing. The next paper comes back to the October meeting of the executive. In line with the request from Quest, that will have a further iteration of detail, and as far as possible, we will put some trajectories for improvement within it. And so that is absolutely the focus and what we'll bring forward. I would just note at Trust Board that we are, and my team were here yesterday with Health Board colleagues. We've got the PTR regulatory changes coming through that take effect from the 1st of April as well. So as we go through this journey, I think Bethan's point earlier about what the trajectory improvement looks like, we've got to be really clear that we an underlying trajectory for improvement. There then will also be within that an expectation of significant change. And we're just trying to work through that as well. So not everybody necessarily will be cited on those changes coming through.
Okay, thank you. It's really helpful. A good level of assurance provided there, but noted, with some caution as well. So thank you very much. So we are asked if the report provides sufficient assurance, whether further information, scrutiny or assurance is required, or further remedial actions are to be undertaken through executives. So I think earlier in the meeting we did identify a couple of actions that are relevant to this. I just want to check that everybody's happy to note those recommendations. Yes? Okay, thank you. So I was going to propose we take the next item, but I'm just looking around the room to see we're happy with that, or do we want to take a break now? Okay, can't see anybody disagreeing, so we'll go with it. So back to you, Estelle, for the IMTP.
So I'm conscious now I'm between everybody and the biscuits. So I'll make this brief, particularly as this again had a good run round FPC and is in effect the same paper. So this IMDP update actually focuses on specifically on two things in particular, the CMT programme highlight report and also Cabinet Secretary priorities, which you'll be aware of. Just a couple of things to update colleagues on. Obviously, the information there is self-explanatory, and I'll take the paper as read. But just a couple of things. Just before FPC, so that's what last week, Jane. I'm losing track of time, but last week we had a very positive feedback from Welsh Government actually on the IMTP, which was positive. So that's like a kind of internal planning in Welsh Government peer review of our work and our ambitions. So that was positive to receive. Obviously, we'll reflect that in future reports and just make sure we're hitting all the marks that we need to. And the second thing is just to say that execs are currently in the midst of a live conversation around this year's current IMTP, in terms of where are we in terms of confidence levels on the things that either are not started or are starting to lag behind, recognising the effort that's gone in this year, specifically into the performance management framework changes and the model work. What have we still got on the to-do list, if you like? Are those things going to stay on the to-do list? Have we got confidence that they're going to be done? Or do we actually need to make a mature decision and say, do you know what, this year they're probably not going to get done? And if they're not going to get done, what do we then do with them? Do we roll them into next year's IMTP? Or actually, do they become business as usual within the individual directorates or shared directorates? Or indeed, do they get parked on a permanent basis, as it were, either because the environment's changed, the world has changed, we've moved on, or because it was in the nice to do pile. But actually, we know that next year we're going to need to consolidate some of the gains that we've seen this year and really understand what's going on in terms of performance, quality, and everything else. And we're also, to be blunt, going to have to create some headspace for us in terms of what might be coming out of a new government. And we don't know what that's going to look like yet, obviously, but we need to. There will inevitably be some changes, and that we need to create some capacity for that. So all of us, in multiple organisations will have seen examples of where, and I'm making these figures up, with 100 odd targets, and actually they've all got rolled over. We don't want to be in that position. We want to be in a position where we say, this year, if we need to consolidate our lens on, fewer things, then we need to make that decision fairly soon and be clear with board about that. We bring that back through committees and board to sense check. And then, in terms of this year's IMTP process, working up next year's, as it were, what's that going to look like? And where does that fit also with our ambitions to review our long-term strategy over the next 12 to 18 months? So there's quite a lot of moving parts in kind of IMTP planning world at the moment and live ELT conversations. So I just wanted to bring board up to speed with that, because I think the paper itself is fairly self-explanatory, but I just wanted to bring you up to speed with where we are with the thinking around the IMTP.
Oh, that's really helpful. So presumably we'll come back to this in November.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. For this year's for actions, but also thinking about next year as well. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. As you say, it's fairly straightforward.
And again, Jane, we had a good run around this in FPC, so I don't know if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, so if I can come in there, because I think absolutely we recognise, you consider the amount of transformation that's going on and the resource and it, impact across your organisation. Talked about people, but the pressure we're putting on digital colleagues in terms of making sure that we've got that set up as well. I think we have to recognise there has to be some prioritisation and re-prioritisation on that. Evidence-based, of course, but I don't think we've got anything to fear on that because of the degree of transformation that's going on. So absolutely supportive of the position and welcome, I think, the fact that thinking is going on, because I think we've had every time board meets, we do consider how this is feeling pretty hot, as I describe, in terms of delivering operation, and we're about to now go into winter. So we have to be realistic, and I think if it's evidence-based, then there's not an issue in terms of we have to be then having conversations with Welsh Government, but also our wider partners in this big system that we are trying to navigate.
Thank you, Jane. That's really helpful. I just in that context, when I read 12.1, the clinical model transformation program highlight report, the volume of work in that report. And last week we were talking about risk tolerance statements and business as usual and transformation. And it just feels to me, you know, as an organisation, there's this enormous pressure for both. And, you know, how they come together and our expectations of people and, you know, the outcomes we're delivering. It's a really important context as a board we need to be mindful of. Sorry, Rihanna.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But I would echo all of that and the confidence levels and the really proper conversation in terms of what we can and should. I just wanted to check if something was missing. Because I was trying to follow through at 3.1, I was looking for the prevention element, and it says section 5.3 sets out our position. And I went down to 5.3 and all I could see in 5.3, a full update of FSP. I don't know what that acronym is, sorry. That might just be
Sustainability Programme.
Okay, thank you. So is that really 5.3?
I'm trying to find 5.5. I'm scrolling as we speak.
So it's just, sorry.
When did you say go to 5.3?
So in
full update on FSP will be made at the next board meeting in November. I've got 5.3.
So when you're in the what do we call them? The accountability conditions.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the 3.1 and there's getting services ready for the future, and I was looking for stuff on effective prevention of ill health. I was just looking to follow that through. And it says section 5.3 below sets out our position on population health. Okay. So when I went down to 5.3, there wasn't anything. So there was something.
You may well be right, Rhiannon. They may.
I may not be, but
offline.
Yeah.
Just take that
We'll pick that up. I'll get you an update on.
Yeah. But also take the papers because they're in the public domain as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So we can. Do we do that then if we need to add to it?
Well, we can take a conversation separately, but I think as we bring these through to FPC next time, we'll make sure that we draw that out. So if we take an action to make sure it's drawn out in the next FPC report.
No. I think it's a good point that in the papers are in the public, so the public need to be able to access the information as well. Okay, so we'll take that offline and okay. Thank you for raising it. Any other points? Okay, no. Okay, so what?
Sorry. Do you mind if Liam also wants to come in. I don't know if you.
Just on the back of Rhiannon's question, just to give Trust Board assurance that we are focused on our approach to population health and public health. I think we are the two groups through which we're going to be moving ourselves forward over the next period. We have a mixture of the clinical advisory group and the financial sustainability group. So we're using both of those groups as the overarching vehicles to have organisational involvement, engagement, and take our work forward. We've got more to do in terms of building what that plan looks like, both on the pop health and on the population health and on the public health side.
Yes, I knew work was happening, which is why I was kind of looking for it.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, and it was just a last point from me, which is just to say a big thank you to Alex. So most of you will know him, but he's leaving us in a couple of days' time to go to the JCC. Good promotion for him and great for JCC. But he's been with us 6 years writing our IMTPs for the last, for a long time. So big thanks to him for all that he's done. And as you say, we've had some really good feedback kind of in all those years about the work that has been done. Thank you.
Good point. We can log that thanks on behalf of the board. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're asked to note the CMT programme interim Q2 position, that the specific update on director-led deliverables, and note the interim Q2 position for the Cabinet Secretary priority. So can I just check we're all happy with that? Yeah. Okay. And also at this point, I just wanted to thank Estelle because you sort of had another job added to your job a couple of months ago. And so thank you on behalf of our board for all the additional work.
Thank you,
leading the team. Appreciate that.
It's a pleasure.
So we're now got a 15-minute break, so we'll come back at 11:35. Good, thank you. Welcome back, everybody. So we're now moving into the monthly finance performance report from Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take paper as read as usual. So it's just some key points to draw out. Following Chris's update at month 3, Trust is still reporting a deficit, a slightly improved deficit this month of 229, and that's because of a small surplus of 17k within month 5. Now that's an improvement on the trajectory we'd forecast at month 3 as well. So we are pulling back the deficit faster than originally planned. So as detailed within the reading room, the monitoring returns are included in there, and that's where those forecasts are brought through. Again, as detailed in month 3, the 2 main reasons around the swing to the financial position. One was in relation to the Welsh risk pool, and also the one was in relation to our planning assumptions around the national employers contribution. So in relation to Welsh risk pool debtors, following both DOPS and Deputy DOPS meetings, the Trust, along with health boards, requested some additional information to come through, and that has recently come through in the last week. In relation to that, what I would like to flag today is that the risk we will be reporting at month 6 has increased in relation to Welsh risk pool. So whilst the original information is included within the position at month 5, Welsh risk pool and shared services have included within their report a potential additional risk of 213k for WAST. However, just to note, that is if everything was to happen in year. There are some elements that can potentially go up and down, but just to note to the board that we will be including that from month 6, that there is a further risk associated with the Welsh risk pool. Potential positive to note on that the report did actually reduce our percentage share down, and that's due to the work that the PTR team has done, cash flows, and quite a large methodology that's applied across how that risk pool share is calculated. So our percentage has reduced down to 1.87% from 2.01%. So very small, but given what I've just mentioned about how much our additional risk is, the impact on the health boards obviously associated with that risk is quite high. The second element obviously is in relation to the national employers contribution. In relation to what was reported at month 3, that value has increased. Again, positive on that we have been able to invoice for the amounts that was indicated by Welsh Government. So we've invoiced for the 3.5 million in relation to that, but we did have shortfall of 1.2 million. But again, that is in our forecast, and we are still reporting a break-even position at year end, which again is helpful in terms of where we are to date. And that is in relation to all the work that's going on around EFG, and also the discussions with all the relevant directorates to bring our position back in line. In terms of our savings schemes, again, we've overachieved in month. We've achieved 3.582 million against target of 3.486 million. And again, we're still planning on achieving the 8.5 million at year end. PSPP was on target with 98.8 for number and 99.1% of the value against target of 95%. So again, in line with all the no PO, no pay policies coming through, we're still achieving really good performance in relation to our payment of invoices for non-NHS. In relation to the capital programme, again, we're on target to achieve our capital expenditure limit of just over 30 million. And with bulk of that expenditure weighted into the final 2 quarters of the year. I know sometimes board get a little bit concerned about that, but just due to the nature of our capital programme, that is how it works. And unfortunately, the bulk of that expenditure normally does land in the latter 2 months of the financial year. So not noted, but was included on the risk report, was in relation to corporate risk 139. That has stayed static for this month, and that is on the back of the fact that we've been all the work that's been going on through the relevant committees and the fact that we do have a positive trajectory to the end of the financial year. So hopefully the paper, that was all clear within the paper, but if there's any questions, take them now.
Thank you, Ed. It's a really good summary for us. And as you say, the papers that's it all out. I just wondered, Jane, did you want to come in here?
Nothing really to add. Welcome the update from Ed in terms of welcome, I don't know if that's the right word really, in terms of the risk profile. As I sort of say, some clarity is always helpful, isn't it? Shows how quickly things are going to continue to move, I think, in year. But FPC certainly assured by finance teams have got a very close eye on that. And we did test out the point actually on capital, and that spend being at the back end of the year. And we're assured similarly on that we are absolutely moving as fast as we can. And I think it's just the whole nature of the way we're structured financially on capital, and that's out of our control. So we very much do firmly control what is within our control financially. So that's all I would say on that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the finance report?
Yeah, thanks. Just echoing what Jane said, it's I think well done to the team. I think what we take assurance of is that managing the in-year allocation clearly is being achieved. So that close attention to detail, I think, is welcome. So I don't certainly have any issues in terms of the ability to come in. The Welsh risk pool issue is a little bit disconcerting, if that's the right word, the fact it changes around so much. So that's one issue. I suppose for me, I think the key issue is not so much this year, but we've seen an increase in trend over the last 12 months of having to find unbudgeted costs. So the NI increase is one. The EMT regrading is another example. We were told possibly the JCC were going to want more savings from us. So for me, all that demonstrates is it's getting tougher. So whilst we are demonstrating really good financial management and control in year, I think the more concerning issue for me is next year and beyond. I know that you'll obviously be starting the budgeting process in due course, but I think as a board, I think that's the key message for me is, what's next year going to look like? That the risk pool, I understand, Ed, could even get worse next year, who knows? Or it could get carried into next year.
Yes, so potentially the indications at present are that the risk that we've had to pay out this year is going to be likely the same going forward. So the trajectory again is the same. So we were hoping that we'd return to previous levels, but based on the work that's been undertaken by shared services, they anticipate that it will stay at a reasonably steady level over the next couple of years, which is obviously a further pressure for our planning process. And again, just on the NI, part of the underfunding from central government was covered by Welsh Government's contingency. That won't be covered in next financial year either. So the impact potentially could be circa 2.4 million next year, not 1.2 million, which would hit this year. So it's all mounting up to continue to be serious concerns as we move into the planning process.
I think just one for us as a board to be aware of.
Yeah, and obviously we'll keep that under review, but also Finance and Performance Committee are also very much keeping that under review. So, Rachel.
I was just going to kind of, I suppose, agree with that position, Peter, and as we alluded to earlier, that the financial position in the current year of our health board colleagues is very difficult, and we know that is likely to potentially get worse next year. There's kind of one element of kind of light potentially at the end of it's not at the end of the tunnel, but we do have our new head of commercial development starting on the 6th of October, and so we did have some conversations at executive team yesterday talking about kind of like bringing the financial sustainability programme really a bit more to the fore, and some ideas about what sort of thing might go in there to add to the kind of tools that we have in our pocket to help us with that financial sustainability issue in a tight scenario. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't have any questions. I guess just reflecting on the paper was 8.5 million pounds worth of savings. It's not easy, and we do, and I've always observed, since I've been a member of this board, the thinking robust financial management. But that takes everybody to buy into that, not just the finance team, doesn't it? But it does sound like, next year could get more challenging. So, perhaps as the board, we will be spending more time on this moving forward. But thank you very much for bringing the report to us. So we are asked to note and gain assurance in relation to the month 5. I think it's a test there for me, Trish, around month 3 or month 5. But note the delivery of the savings plan and the capital programme for 25-26. And note that month 5 Welsh Government monitoring return submission. So are we all happy to note that? Yep. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to Speaking Up Safely update. So over to you, Catherine.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm bringing this for noting for the board today, and I think it's a real privilege to be able to bring this after the investment and support of the organisation to implement this over the last couple of years. So some of the key highlights from this report then. Last June saw the appointment of a full-time lead guardian. And we've been able to continue to expand that. We're interviewing in a couple of weeks for another guardian post, and we have a public support up in post as well now. We've got strong national collaboration with the other NHS Wales Guardians, and at the moment we still are the only organisation in Wales that has a full-time standalone guardian. And so people are looking to our model to think about how they work with any other organisations. Over the last year, we've engaged in extensive awareness campaigns within the organisation, including the CEO roadshows and National Speak Up, which was October. 113 concerns have been raised, with 56% of those going directly to the Guardian and 44% via Work Confidence platform, which is our anonymous digital reporting platform. Although all concerns come into that anonymously, the majority of them become confidential or open over the course of time, which is what we're really striving to do, to have an open culture of bringing concerns as early as possible. Another highlight is that we received reasonable assurance from the shared services audit earlier this year, and we have worked hard to increase our engagement with our people networks and our culture champions throughout the organisation, so people become more aware of the pathways to speaking up. In terms of themes and trends, most concerns that related to inappropriate behaviours, bullying and self-wellbeing. There were concerns raised by a diverse range of staff groups, with obviously operational colleagues being most represented, but that is simply a reflection of the fact that they are the largest proportion of the organisation. I alluded to the fact there was increased openness post-contact with the Guardian, so indicating some growing trust within the organisation. A lot of the time people are unsure of what will happen, so it's just clarifying processes. And as you see in the report, the majority of cases are settled with direct conversation, either with the Guardian or with a conversation with managers. Key barriers for speaking up are fear of retribution, perceived bias, and confidentiality concerns. And we do have lessons learned forums which share insights and help us to improve our processes and feedback into the loop. So we're regular meetings with people services and these Guardian colleagues, and putting things with the team. The priorities for the future are to continue to expand the team, really enhance leadership development through our West Way, so the confidence in managers having conversations early on, and so people feel that they can speak up directly to their manager, because that's the culture we want to encourage. We do recognise that we need to really strengthen our confidentiality practices and acknowledge confidentiality of our people is just as important as that as our patients. And we also need to ensure support from protected groups. I thought it might be helpful for board, as I did in the People and Culture Committee, just to sort of run through some of the main themes and what we're doing about those, just to provide a bit of assurance. So the assumption that no action is going to take place after speaking up. So we're drawing up a set of KPIs to ensure that there's clear feedback loops so people understand and can see what's happened. We have to balance this obviously with confidentiality, how much we can share when concerns have been followed up. Every concern sees a questionnaire once their concern has come to a conclusion, and obviously we can try and feed that information in. There's a perceived bias in disciplinary hearings is another one of the themes that comes up. So the introduction of a formal workplace standards process will help ensure consistency and transparency in these matters. And I know people services and our operations team work hard to get that in place. And we also have within our West Way modules on understanding unconscious bias. So we're helping that will people will start to be able to step back and think a bit more about how they ensure that there is no perceived bias in disciplinary hearing. A fear of retribution from peers and managers, so leading people not being comfortable to speak out. So we have drafted a detriment risk assessment, and we'll begin to pilot that in the coming months. Earlier this year, I had a training from the psychologist placement who did look at what else we could do in that area, and the consistent feedback was just get better earlier on up the stream, and I think that's a really important message, isn't it? So if we can, and I think our West Way can really help us support people having difficult conversations earlier on, and seeing that the feedback that people can act on. There is also quite a consistent theme of people not always knowing how to escalate concerns, and therefore directing people to speaking up safely when actually already in another arena. So we know we've got to do more in terms of providing awareness and education of what the appropriate routes are. I think it's important to highlight that the speaking up safely process was developed in partnership, and I think it's just recognition that we need to refresh our partnership work, particularly with people who perhaps weren't involved in an early stage. Delays in process, particularly in disciplinary hearings, has been raised frequently, and I think you will know we put additional resources into our investigation procedures, and it helps to reduce that timeline. But that's something we need to be very mindful of, and I think it's helpful to just share that that's across the board. Those are the types of concerns that guardians in many organisations are receiving, often about process and timelines. I've already alluded to the breaches in confidentiality, so we just need to increase on fostering that real culture of confidentiality within the organisation. And then incivility in our organisation. A lot of the concerns are around how we are to each other. So again, our West Way really help us get better at having difficult conversations, but in a way where we can still remain civil to each other. So I hope that's a helpful summary of where we are.
Right. Thanks, Catherine. Really helpful summary. And just add a couple of points from me in my capacity of Chair of People and Culture and the board champion. I think the People and Culture Committee took a lot of assurance from the report, and I think it's important that we think about this in the broader cultural transformation work, because speaking up safely is one element of us transforming our culture. But I think the work that WAST have done in this space has really started to make a significant impact, isn't it? That we've got a widely dispersed workforce, and it is quite challenging. So I think really good progress. I think it's important that as a board we know that this needs to be a key priority moving forward, and that we can't think it's done. We very much need to continue our focus in this space. And the last point was really, I think the executive team support on it is also really important, and we've seen that from a people and culture perspective. So so we're asked to note the content of the report and support the integration of speaking up safely within the trust, the principles. So any comments or questions for Rhiannon?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Really would echo what Kerry said. I'm not part of the People Committee, so obviously I won't have seen it on its journey, so to speak. But really good to see where you've got to thus far, and I think there's a lot to take from an assurance perspective. Just a couple of things. What didn't come through for me in the report, so there was a reference there to reasonable assurance from internal audit, presumably, and how we're addressing that through what we're focusing forward on. It just didn't come through for me. And the other bit that I just wanted to see what your thoughts were really, so where it focuses on perceived bias in relation to disciplinary hearings. Actually, there's a lot of evidence that it's not about perception, it is actually bias, particularly in relation to ethnicity, and NMC can give you loads of quotes around that, or evidence, I should say. So I was just wanted to get my head around the kind of word perception vis-a-vis, and are we talking about bias in the ethnicity space, in the gender space, in the disability, or is it across the range of protected characteristics? Is there one particular area of bias that we need to be more alert to as obviously an anti-racist organisation, and very much want to ensure colleagues who perhaps find it even harder to have a voice?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll take your first point first, and that's really helpful feedback. Just for your information, the issues that were raised in that audit report was around having a clear action plan, which we were able to provide evidence of, ensuring that we were getting feedback, and again we were able to do that, and also to address some of the concerns around detriment as well. And obviously we've developed the detriment risk assessment. So I feel like we've addressed the concerns adequately. That's my perception. In terms of the perceived bias, a lot of the things are around that. I think the work we're doing in the EDI space, and I think that comes through later, will demonstrate actually I think we're in a fairly strong place, or getting to a strong place in terms of protected characteristics. A lot of the perceived biases around who people know. So that's sort of yeah. So I think where it becomes more of a grey area, doesn't it? Because I think it may well be perception rather than and a mix. I think it will go up and down that line. So that's why we've used the word perceived, because we need to find out a bit more information about that before we do.
It's in a different area, but I do think need to stay very alert to the known bias in terms of evidence in those other areas. So just to be saying that, thank you.
I was just looking at Carl. Thank you, Catherine. Did you want to come in?
Just to add that we picked that up in some of our other EDI reporting in terms of, the processes that people go through, and we do some of that EDI checking. I suppose that the challenge we have is that unless people declare their protected characteristics, it's very hard to then track that through the system, because there's no requirement for people to update our employee systems. So unless it's there, we can't report on it, and then we're only reporting on a portion. So we are looking at a mechanism in formal processes whereby we have a confidential link to Kat in our team, the EDI lead, so that actually through a process we can then demonstrate whether there's been any detriment, especially through the speaking up safety process, but also through other policies. So it's an evolving piece of work. It's something that we're alert to, and I think in terms of gender pay gap and race equality, we're aware of that from sort of the social economical lens, but actually we'd like to really get underneath some of that policy interpretation within West. So it's right that we keep that in our sights. Thank you.
Really good question. Thank you. Okay, so just checking that we're all happy to note the report. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So moving us on to the governance report. Over to you, Liz.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the report that sets out our use of the trust seal since the last meeting and decisions made in private session. But I think what I'd like to draw out is an amendment that we made to the July minutes. The record didn't provide clarity that the strategic quality plan was approved. And that was the recommendation in the paper, and that was the discussion. So we've just corrected the minutes to make sure that it's clear that it was approved. So just that's the only thing I'd like to draw out.
Okay. Any questions? Comments for Trish? No? Okay, so we're happy to note the content of the report. Thanks, Trish. So moving on to board committee reports. So as we've said a number of times during this meeting today, a lot of the business does take place in the committees. So now this is the opportunity of the committee chairs to provide some highlights from those committees, some key updates. Also, the AAA reports as part of the board papers, a very helpful summary of those meetings as well. So can I come to you first, Bethan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. So Quest met on the 5th of August, as I mentioned earlier, and in the AAA report, as Trust Board members will see, there's only one item in the alert section, and we've covered that off earlier, which is around the PTR report and the recovery plan. So I'll move forward to the advise section, if I may, please, Chair. And there are a few items I'd like to draw attention to. The first one is the patient story. And as you mentioned earlier, Chair, we receive a patient story at every meeting. And from my perspective, it's an absolutely essential part of that committee meeting. So in this meeting, we were fortunate to hear from Sophie. She shared her story with us, and we were very grateful to hear this because, as always, we can learn a lot. Now, Sophie is a learning disability lived advisor with WAST, so she's quite actively involved with us, and that's really helpful for us in terms of shaping our improvements, because members will remember that we've been actively trying to improve our support for people with learning disabilities accessing our services for quite a while, in terms of improving the accessibility and ease in which they access the service. Her story was specifically relating to the 111 service, and as members will see from the AAA, she drew attention to lots of positives and also several areas for improvement. So there's plenty of food for thought there for us. The one thing I would like to say about this story is that as a committee, we were assured that officers are actively trying to make the relevant improvements to improve the services that we offer for people like Sophie and everybody else that we support. Secondly, we received an update on our previous patient story, and we've referred to this earlier on in our meeting today, and Trust Board also received this story. So you'll all remember the story that Mr. and Mrs. Cope shared with us about their son Dylan. It was a particularly tragic story, as we'll all remember. However, the one thing that Dylan's parents wanted was for there to be a legacy for Dylan. And we were very pleased to see that coming out of what was a set of tragic circumstances, now there is an All Wales sepsis leaflet that has been developed, which hopefully will be of benefit to other people in the future. And within this, I would like to give a particular call out to one of our staff members, Lucy Jones, because her continued work on this and drive to deliver improvements in this area were recognised and commended by Quest Committee. There are many other usual reports that we received that sit within the advise section. I won't draw any attention to those, but happy to take questions at the end. The only comment I would make is that we did defer our annual IPC report because we recognise there was still some ongoing work, so we will receive that in due course. In the Assure section, there are several reports referenced in the AAA report. I'd like to call out a few, please, Chair. Firstly, the ambulance performance framework, which we've referred to in today's meeting, and we did receive an update on this. The Quest Committee welcomed the focus on the clinical indicators within this, and also we recognised that the launch on the 1st of July went very well, and at that point there were no known patient safety incidents that arose directly due to the changes in the call categorisation. And work is well underway for phase 2, as we referenced earlier. We received a report around the Ministerial Advisory Group, the Weight 45 Task Force, and we recognised within this there is a true focus on system-wide improvements here, and members were particularly pleased to note the significant cultural shift that's starting to happen now in terms of shared accountability across all partner agencies. We've already discussed the PTR report. It's always a key part of what we discuss at Quest for obvious reasons. We received and approved our safeguarding annual report and recognised the user friendliness and the depth of information and the progress that we've been making over recent years across WAST in this area. We received our clinical plan for 2025 to 2030, and within this, we're very, very pleased to note the development of a new interactive format for presenting this report. And this is there to enhance user engagement. So hopefully that will achieve that focus. We received 2 internal audits, one on the start of shift procedure and the second one on the emergency communication nurse system implementation. As always, Chair, we considered our 2 largest risks throughout our agenda and throughout the meeting. And we also noted the new incoming risk, which is being developed around the Trust's ability to manage the overdue investigations and the audit processes. I'll stop there, Chair, but happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you. Diolch.
Diolch, Bethan. Any questions or points? Liam?
Just Bethan, if I may add to the patient stories, that since we had Quest, we have made the appointment to the advanced clinical practitioner role for learning disability. So that person now will start in the next month or so, and I think that's quite an exciting development for us as a trust. We've had a number of stories both at Quest and here demonstrating how there's opportunities for us to learn, not just for people with learning disability, but actually if we can get it right for more people in those situations, and then get it right for more people in the round. And also in that space, we've done quite a bit of work around the register for people who are known to have learning disabilities across Wales, and how that information can inform and shape clinical advisors, particularly in what will become the integrated care service. So just noting those 2. And then on the back of the safeguarding report, just to note, maybe helpful to note that we received and have approved subsequently the new anti-sexual harassment policy for Wales. And within that policy, there's a really important kind of component there for us to have direct and clear links across into safeguarding at an organisational and at a multi-organisational level. So even in the time since Quest, we continue to make good progress in a number of fronts.
Great, thank you. Very helpful. Johnny? Oh,
No,
sorry.
it's fine. Sorry.
Thank you. Just on Sophie's story, actually, just from a digital perspective, I think it was really important to highlight how it is important that we have that voice represented in anything that we design digitally. So whilst we follow accessibility standards, whilst we're looking at different channels that people can access care to, it's so important that we hear that story and have that voice. So one of the things that we are doing in digital is trying to understand how do we open up to the right patient and staff groups with those protected characteristics so that they can aid us through the design process, as opposed to us doing digital to public and staff. So again, I just wanted to highlight a really important story for us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I've been trying to get into more of a place with my champion role as Children and Young Persons Net Champion. And I had a conversation with some of Liam's team in that space. But what I haven't understood is perhaps when the board schedule in terms of board safeguarding, is there any planned scheduled in terms of the whole board in the board development space? I was able to answer that question when I was asking about, is it on the future plans?
Not for this financial year, but there is potentially some space, but we haven't done next year's either. So that's something that we can pick up separately.
The all board members have access to the online training that obviously picks up level 2 and to point level 3 to pick up the multi-agency end. I appreciate we're doing a review. So the intercollegiate guidance document, both for vulnerable adults and for children and young people, have been revised. It does actually put quite a significant change in terms of requirements for all of our people, actually, not just from a trust board perspective. So we're reviewing how we can best respond to that intercollegiate guidance in a way that works for the whole organisation, make sure we've got the right information and the right governance flows. This week we had some masterclasses that were open to staff, colleagues, across the whole trust. So we had 2 sessions, one run on the offender, the psychology of an offender, which was led by a psychotherapist who's worked in some pretty extreme settings, dealing with some of the more complex cases in the UK. And then in the afternoon, we had a further session, which was then on adverse childhood experiences. And one of the learning points that we took from there is actually there's more we need to think about in terms of corporate parenting charter and the responsibilities that we have in that space. At a trust board level, both of those were open and available, and I would likely bring them back as part of an expert masterclass. So I've been talking with the Chief Nurse of Wales about how we replicate something that she and I both experienced from previously in our career, where we bring board members together to have a conversation and to have very high caliber speakers who really understand what this looks like at a true assurance level. So we're trying to do that using, rather than going into our kind of own place of England where I could go and pick up the phone up quite quickly, we're trying to identify the right people to do that with that experience in Wales. We will run it first here. That's the plan. And then if we can get it right for us, then we will look to replicate that, support that into other health.
It is the board level I was particularly asking about.
I just want to make that, I guess I take the opportunity because I am aware that when I look at Staffman guided compliance across the whole organisation, there is a mixed level of compliance on level 2 and level 3.
Okay, it's helpful. And the safeguarding training is mandatory for us as board members, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Action for board members to check their up to date there. Yeah. Thank you. So, thank you, Bethan. Ian. So I'm going to move us on to the People and Culture Committee update, and also to Meldon, who's joined us for this item and will be presenting some key highlights from the Welsh language annual report. So I'm just going to start with a few key points from our last committee meeting, which was on the 12th of August. So obviously the summary is there for people to read, but just a few highlights. So firstly, in the advice section, we had from the Ops Directorate, Sonia, Ferdy, Kerry and Paul talking about the facilitation of quality and support days, and this actually landed really well with committee. I think there was lots of positive feedback on, I think, the listening and the actions taken as a result of that. So, you know, some good examples of the difference that it make in the tools and the process. So, yeah, it was very positively received by the committee. And I think Andy Chip was talking about how you were thinking about taking forward a similar initiative in your directorate as well. So that was good to hear. Okay, so we talked at the last meeting about the newly qualified paramedics, and we were pleased to hear actually at People and Culture Committee that despite some challenges initially with only 21 of the 80 newly qualified paramedics being offered roles, actually that had risen to 52. So that was a positive update, and I know the committee are receiving regular updates on this, and a lot of work is going on, it's fair to say, behind the scenes on this. So something that we will be keeping an eye on. There was Mastering Diversity conference this month, I think, which we had quite a strong presence at. Moving on to the Ashore section, we had a deep dive presented to us on violence and aggression, which actually was really thought-provoking, and an excellent report, which I think it, you know, gave us the depth and breadth and enabled a good conversation. So although data shows moderate and severe harm incidents are low and declining, you know, there's a need for us to be very vigilant and also to be mindful that there's probably some underreporting in this space. So some of the feedback included the importance of visible leadership and prompt follow-up in this space. So the committee reinforced the need for a clear internal zero tolerance message and that practical support for staff and ensuring our managers are equipped to recognise and respond to cumulative effects of repeated incidents. And there's a detailed conversation by committee where lots of assurance was provided. And then I'm going to pass over to Carl, who's going to take us through the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion annual reports that were presented to committee that are here for approval, or endorsed by committee for approval by the board today.
Thank you, Chair. So you've already confirmed that we at committee went through the Strategic Equality Plan annual report, the annual Gender Pay Gap report, and the annual Workforce Equality Monitoring report. So a number of reports there that went through to committee and were endorsed. So alongside key achievements, learning and forward plans, progress has been made in staff engagement, in leadership focus and the impact of our staff networks, with continued attention needed on intersectionality, organisational culture and inclusion. The Gender Pay Gap report prompted discussion on data limitations, which you've already touched on some of the questions today, and support for all gender identities. While barriers to senior roles for women were linked to organisational factors, so things that we're working through. Whilst we've had great success with our digital recruitment outreach initiatives, with a view to increasing interest and attraction from candidates from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, we acknowledge that following feedback from our communities and colleagues, that we need to better position these positive action events moving forward. This will be achieved through closer collaboration with our key stakeholders and our partners. I will now hand over to Catherine, who would also like to pick up on a few points.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you. And you mentioned the Masculine Diversity Conference. So I just really wanted to say what an absolute highlight that was. So it was on the 11th of September. We hosted the Health Zone. And I say we, I wasn't around, I really wish I was. It was largely run by our People Network chairs. So all coming and talking about what it means to work in this organisation and that sort of sense of belonging. And the feedback afterwards was tremendous. Those people in the audience are really thinking that WAS was a place that they would like to work. So it feels like some really, really, really important steps. I think, sort of going back to your comment, Rhiannon, as well, about never losing sight of actually how much work we do have to do is really important, but I think it's also helpful to just celebrate that as well. We also had really positive feedback from the RES report last week, which I think was really good, but again reminding ourselves we've got a lot of work to do, but we've made some significant improvements, so that was good. I know that there's going to be a spotlight on EDI at the next board meeting in November, and the staff story, but the patient story will also sort of share some of the thoughts of working within the organisation and what that means. So I just wanted to sort of celebrate how much we've done, whilst also recognizing we have to do.
Thank you. So Melvin, can I come to you now, please, for some key highlights from our annual Welsh language report?
Diolch yn fawr. So, pnawn da. Dyma'r chweched adroddiad blynyddol o waith yr ymddiriedolaeth wrth arddangos sut mae safon ar Gymraeg wedi gweithredu a hoffwn dynnu eich sylw i'r meysydd canlynol. So this is the 6th annual report of the Trust's work in showcasing how the Welsh language standards have been implemented, and I would like to bring to your attention the following areas. Cymeradwyodd y Pwyllgor Pobl a Diwylliant ein polisi Cymraeg newydd i feithrin ethos dwyieithog o fewn y sefydliad, cydymffurfio ar safonau Gymraeg a darparu'r cynnig rhagweithiol. Bu gwelliannau i lywodraethu ac ailiniad strategol gyda'r Pwyllgor Iaith yn adrodd i'r grŵp lliwio cydraddoldeb a chynhwysiant. The People and Culture Committee approved the Trust's new Welsh language policy that describes the steps the Trust will take to foster a bilingual ethos, compliance with the Welsh language standards, and providing an active offer. There have been improvements to governance and strategic alignment, with the Welsh Language Advisory Group now reporting to the EDI Steering Group. Bydd cynnydd sylweddol mewn perfformiad yn ymdrin â galwadau Cymraeg 111 yn 23-24, gydag ateb galwadau Cymraeg yn codi o 18% i 45%, yn 24-25 arhosod perfformiad ysfydlog ar 45%, fodd bynnag mae'r galwm y Gymraeg yn parhau fod yn isel ychydig dros 1% o gyfanswm y galwadau. Y cynllun gwella ar waith gan gynnwys y criwtio sydd wedi dargedu proffilio trinwyr galwadau dros y penwythnos a hyblygrwydd opsio allan i alwyr. There have been significant performance increase in 111 Welsh language call handling in 23-24, with the Welsh language call answering rising from 18% to 45%. In 24-25, performance remained stable at 45%. However, Welsh language demand remains low, just over 1% of total 111 calls, and an improvement plan is in place, including targeted recruitment, weekend call handler profiling, and opt-out flexibility for callers. Gostyngodd perfformiad trin galwadau NEPS o 89% yn 23-24 i 77% yn 24-25, ond dal yn lefel dda o gydymffurfiaeth. Gall hyn fod yn gysylltiedig â gostyngiad y nifer o trinwyr galwadau sy'n siarad Cymraeg. Mae cynllun ar waith i flaenoriaethu recriwtio siaradwyr Cymraeg ac ailunio ar strategaeth gweithlu ar gyfer 26-27. Mae sesiad anghenion cleifio NEPS wedi gyfieithu ar gyfer staff sy'n derbyn galwadau Cymraeg. NEPS call handling performance declined from 89% in 23-24 to 77% in 24-25, but still is a good level of compliance. This attributed to a reduction in Welsh-speaking call handlers. A plan is in place to prioritize recruitment of Welsh speakers and align with broader workforce strategy for 26-27. And the NEPS patient assessment has been translated for use by our Welsh-speaking call takers. Gweithredwyd gwaelodyn cydymffurfio ar safona yn canolbwyntio ag ohebiaeth cyhoeddi dogfennau ac arwyddion ac gwasanaethau derbynfeydd. Yn dilyn asesiodd cydymffurfiaeth dangoswyd cydymffurfio da gyda gohebiaeth cyhoeddi dogfennau ac arwyddion gyda meysydd gwella gyda gwasanaethau derbynfeydd. Bydd y gwaelodlyn cydymffurfio yn parhau gyda'r un safonau yn 25-26 i adeiladu ar y gwaith sydd eisoes wedi gychwyn. O'r arolwg hunan asesiad nodwyd bod cydymffurfiaeth da yn gysylltiedig â staff dwyieithog, cynllunio rhagweithiol, ymwybyddiaeth o'r safonau a defnydd o'r gwasanaethau cyfieithu mewnol. The Trust implemented a Welsh Language Standards Compliance baseline that focused on correspondence, document publications, signage and reception services. Following compliance assessments, areas of good compliance related to correspondence, publishing documents and signage, with areas for improvement being reception services. The compliance baseline will continue with the same standards in 25-26 to build on the work already started. Notably, compliance from self-assessment survey was linked to bilingual staffing, proactive planning, awareness of the standards, and the use of the in-house translation service. Yn ogystal, mae Kate Evans, aelod arall o'r tîm, wedi bod yn brysur gyda'r tîm cyfathrebu yn diweddaru'r hwb iaith, gyda fideos defnyddiol ar gyfer datblygu sgiliau iaith. Sefydlwyd ein rhwydwaith Gymraeg newydd i ddarparu fforwm agored i staff i gefnogi defnydd a thwf y Gymraeg o fewn y sefydliad. A hefyd lanswydd ddoe cwrs Cymraeg ar gyfer staff y gwasanaethau meddygol brys, sydd eisoes yn gallu staff ymgysylltu a'n cleifion sy'n siarad Cymraeg ar y pwynt cyswllt cyntaf. My fellow team member, Kate Evans, has been busy working with our comms team in updating the Welsh Language Hub with a series of useful videos on developing Welsh language courtesy skills. During the reporting period, a new Welsh language network was established to provide an open forum for staff to support the use and growth of the Welsh language within the organisation. And the new Welsh language course was launched yesterday for paramedics and EMTs who want to be able to engage with our Welsh-speaking patients in that first point of contact. Wrth edrych ymlaen, yna nifer o gyfaniadau i IMTP ar gyfer 25-26, gan gynnwys dadansoddiad bwlch a draws pob gwasanaeth mwyn asesu a gwella darpariaeth gwasanaethau Cymraeg, ac yn olaf, yn unol â safon 110, bydd yn datblygu cynllun 5 mlynedd ar gyfer sut i gynnal ymgynghoriad clinigol yn Gymraeg. Looking ahead, the Trust has a number of IMTP deliverables for 25-26, including a focus on a gap analysis across services to improve Welsh language service provision. And finally, in line with Standard 110, a Welsh language clinical consultation plan will be developed to enhance the Trust's capability to deliver clinical consultations in Welsh. Ac mae hynny'n dod â chrynodeb o'r adroddiad I ben. And that concludes a summary of the report. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Melvin. That was a great bilingual presentation of our annual report. Very much appreciated. Thank you. So the 4 reports are here for approval. As I said, they were endorsed by the People and Culture Committee. So can I just check that we're all happy to approve the reports? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the Audit Risk and Assurance Committee, AAA, Peter?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, you've got the AAA report there. Just to bring out a few highlights, we last met on the 2nd of September. Just before that, the non-exec directors, as is an annual event, met with Audit Wales and Internal Audit without management presence. As I said, it's an annual event just to another level of assurance that we get from them. I think it's fair to say, I'm looking at Kerry and Rhiannon, it was a very positive meeting and there's nothing arising from that we need to bring to this board's attention. So all that is good. In terms of the meeting itself, there were 2 areas, we heard about them both today, that we received the annual assurance from. Firstly, the oversight of near miss and low harm intelligence reporting, which Bethan and Liam have spoken a lot about today. I think in summary, I think we accepted as an ARAG that improvements in the reporting may not be forthcoming in the short term. We accepted that. However, we've asked Quest to keep it under review, firstly, and secondly, if ARAG can have an update in 6 months rather than wait the full 12. The second area of assurance was speaking up safely. Again, you've heard from Catherine, and I think committee were assured that's in a good place. So we'll keep that as an annual review. In terms of the meeting itself, Audit Wales confirmed that the annual accounts have been concluded. They were signed off. So again, following on from the earlier theme, well done to Ed and the team for balancing the budget and getting that audit done on time and signed off. Audit Wales, in terms of their performance audits, have got 4 on the stocks. The structured assessment for this year, which is well underway. They will be doing a deep dive into our estates management, as they will be doing with nets and digital as well. Looking at Johnny, I know that the scope of that is well underway as well. So we can look forward to getting those in December, and some might go into the March committee. And also the structured assessment and the unscheduled care output report will be available for December. In terms of internal audit, there were 3 reports, one on the 111 website, which due to the sensitive nature of the management recommendations was considered at the closed meeting, and similarly at FPC, it was a closed meeting item as well. Other internal audit reports, really pleasing to report substantial assurance on the Manchester Arena inquiry. This was looking at the progress made by the Trust in addressing the recommendations raised from the inquiry. So to get substantial assurance was a really good outcome. However, the committee also noted that there are 18 recommendations that require financial investment that remain outstanding, that are going to be referred to the Joint Commissioning Committee with discussions that are ongoing. So whilst it was great to have that report, I think committee were also aware that should a major incident occur before that was funding decisions are made, then essentially we are at risk. So that was discussed. And then the final report was an audit on organisational change, which received reasonable assurance, and that was about evaluating the processes in place in the Trust to effectively manage organisational change. And I believe that's going to BCC for further comment, but a reasonable outcome is a good outcome. So the committee were assured by that. Just some final other areas. I'll just by way of progress, the committee is looking at the strategic assessment of the trust governance framework that came out, if you remember, from the effectiveness reviews from last year. So essentially, ARAC is, I wouldn't say doing the heavy lifting, but is the checking, the sounding board that I know Trish is doing a lot of work in team about what came out of last year and how we might continue to ensure that we're efficient and effective in our governance framework. So more of that later. The policies, Chair, we've already mentioned that. Whilst it slipped slightly, we were still assured, if you like, that the progress on getting those policies completed was working well. And then finally, we keep an eye on risk management. You've heard about that today, and similarly, the integrated governance as well is working well. So nothing to report apart from there is a lot on. There's a lot of plates to spin, but I think that's it, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Peter. And we do need to approve the standing financial instructions, Chapter 11 of government document, isn't it? So, but as a board, we need to approve that as well, which was approved by endorsed for approval by the committee. So, could I just check that we're all happy to do that? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So, we've got the remuneration committee next. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Most of the business of that was to do with the appointment of a new chief executive. The report is there to be reviewed if anybody would like to review it. I wasn't intending to go through any of that detail. And last but not least, over to you, Jane, for Finance and Performance Committee. And obviously we've touched on quite a lot of this throughout the meeting today, haven't we?
Yeah, so just pull out a couple of additional items to provide some further assurance, if that's okay, Claire, because as you said, I think we've covered a lot in terms of items. Just going back to the ambulance performance framework, as Trish said, there's further assurance coming our way in terms of the quality impact and the quality impact assessments. So we'll look forward to seeing those. Mentioned there will be an extraordinary trust board meeting to consider those. And I just also wanted to flag, it did come up in the meeting as well. We're going to adopt a similar approach as we did to phase 1 in terms of there will be a checklist because it's very much a go or no go decision. So it's important, I think, to consider a wide range of issues when we make that decision, because it is all around readiness across the organisation. So the committee was assured that all those mechanisms are in place, and will be briefed on those for the extraordinary meeting. Just moving down then in terms of the advisory committee had also the ambulance service indicators. Yes, more indicators was my initial response to that, but it's really good to see the focus on quality of those. And then I'm just going to pick out some elements in terms of a reminder on the digital KPIs. We've mentioned some aspects of those earlier, but also we did the positive submission to the Audit Wales digital review. That's in all NHS Wales assessments. So we'll look forward to get some feedback in terms of that. We do set standards, or certainly Johnny's team set standards quite high, and we marked ourselves robustly against those. To be interested to see how that pans out across Wales. The information governance report, I just wanted to tease out there that members commended the highest ever information governance mandatory training rate at 89.61%. Just a reminder, this was a stretching target and above our original target, and we've exceeded that now. So that's credit to the teams who have no doubt been doing quite a bit of reminders across the organisation of the importance of that. I think that's coming through now. We had the annual environmental decarb sustainability update, and certainly committee particularly welcomed the estate's condition and backlog maintenance. The investment is really coming through now in terms of the quality of the estate that we've got some reduction in those backlog costs, and making that environment the best it can be for our staff, I think is really important. So yeah, just a few additional things just wanted to tease out there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that summary. Okay, so that brings us to the close of the AAA report. So the next item on the agenda
Johnny to finish.
Oh, sorry.
My arm got long enough to drive for a second there. Sorry, just off the back of the digital recruitment piece, and it kind of ties back to the strategic equality plan. I just wanted to give a formal thanks to Carl's team, Angie's team, and my team for some of the conversations they've been having around the inclusive recruitment workshops. Some of the conversations the team have had are difficult, they're hard, they're quite exposing. So just a formal thanks in front of board today for the efforts that have gone on, and they do that not because they have to, but because they want to. And actually, for us as an organisation, it's dead easy just to say that we're anti-racist, but actually actively doing something here is very different. So I just wanted to formally recognise that, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really, really important point. And I've seen some of that come through on social media as well, which has been good. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for missing you, Johnny. Okay, any more hands up? Just double check. Okay, so consent items. I've not had any indication that anybody wants to raise anything in those items. So I'm going to move it on to reflections and summary. I don't intend to summarise all the decisions and actions today, but I think I would just like to say thank you all for helping to make sure that the meeting ran smoothly and being succinct in presentations, and feels like there's been, you know, a good level of discussion and assurance all today. So I just want to say thank you, standing in as chair. Appreciate that. Is there any reflections? Anything that anybody wants to share at this stage? I appreciate the lunches, you know. There. Anything? No? Okay. So, is there any other business? No? Okay. And so now to note the exclusion of the press and members of the public, to invite the press and public to leave the meeting because of the confidential nature of the business about to be transacted. So the date and the time of the next meeting is the 27th of November here. And there is an extraordinary meeting of the Trust Board on the 23rd of October, which has already been referenced here today on the Phase 2 ambulance performance framework. So I'm going to bring this meeting to a close, and we will reconvene 1:20 for the closed meeting, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah? Okay. York and Val, thank you very much, everybody.